Welcome, friends. Welcome. Happy Sunday. Welcome to the Starry Wisdom Sunday David Lightbringer live stream thing that we've had going for, eight years or so. And really was thinking this week about how lucky and privileged I am and grateful, honestly, to be in the position that I am where I'm hosting, our continued Ice and Fire hangouts, keeping the fandom going because we all love the story, just waiting for Grandpa George to finish it up. But I do love hosting these streams and being the sort of one of the linchpins or pillars or whatever of our little community, and along with friends like Grey Waste Tim and Sean here with 1,000 Voices and many other guests besides. Welcome, Sean. Thanks for coming on this Sunday. And I think both of us, we're just happy to have a place to talk about mythology and symbolism where people are into it, right? I mean, isn't that kind of the bottom line here?
First and foremost, we are prolific nerds.
Prolific nerds, really, exactly. That's it. So we are here to talk about Brienne. No, it's just a salmon-colored, it's rose and azure. It's we're just trying to get the colors going. Sean's got the blue chair and the red jacket.
Yeah, I've got the. We made it there.
Look at you, Sean. Look at you reading Rhaegar. Gosh, I bet you could get a T-shirt like that if you wanted on our bonfire store at the link below. But I think folks know that. And of course, if you do want to sign up for the Patreon, we are giving away T-shirts such as Reading Rhaegar once a month. Next week will be the T-shirt giveaway. I might have said that last week about this week, but we'll definitely do it next week, Mano James Plum, as well as updating the list of our intro video with the new patrons. But enough about that. Please like and subscribe, and please subscribe to Sean's channel with videos, Hero with 1,000 Voices. Link in the description. Hopefully, I think I put it in there. It'll be there. It's Hero with 1,000 Voices, and I'll get a mod to put it in the description right now, or in the chat, and we'll get it in the description afterwards, Sean. It may be in there. I just don't know.
It might be. I can't see, but I was a late edition this week. But either way, yeah, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm very proud of the 2-part investigation I did of Beowulf in J.R.R. Tolkien's work. I have a number of things on Patreon here coming within the next week. I just did a chapter reading for the Bartimaeus sequence, which is a super underrated fantasy series I'm trying to get people to take a look at. But other than that, I have Gilgamesh, The Quest for Immortality, coming out on Patreon this week. And, what did I name the other video? Tolkien's Lost Story, A Light in Dark Places.
So there you go. Lots of nerdy, full nerd content on Hero with 1,000 Voices YouTube channel. And, I had a thought in my head and it just disappeared. What was it? Let's see. Brienne, Song of Ice and Fire, live streaming. Happy to be here. And thank you guys for watching my Night Fort video and the Dracomorph video. Lots of people coming to the channel and finding the new videos, so appreciate that. Bouncing around, watching several of them. That motivates me to make more. So, yeah. And like I said, I do love having a place to talk about this stuff. And, whoa. When did Gilgamesh become nerdy? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's fair. He's pretty much a bro. Also, maybe gay.
It is, but psychoanalyzing his broness is nerdy. There you go.
Yes.
So, yeah. In any case, we are here to talk about Brienne, Lady Brienne, Sir Brienne, Lady, Sir. Pod can't figure it out, and that's for a reason. That's because Brienne. I think if I could start in one place and encapsulate Brienne's character, there's two things I would say about her. In terms of a character in the story, she's a hero. And she's exemplifying the heroic ideal, almost obviously so. It's not even that subtle. She's unquestionably one of the morally good people. She always tries to do the right thing, takes her honor very seriously, is willing to sacrifice herself for others. So we'll get into that. And she also, Sean, really represents a harmony of opposites. We're just talking about the Lady Sir thing. Obviously, there's some gender. I don't know what she's struggling against the gender expectations of her society. Let's just say that we're very obviously so. But it's beyond that. There's ice and fire, sun and moon, day and night symbolism. There's a lot of harmony of opposites. It's called a song of ice and fire. So this is a very important theme. And basically, Sean, it led us to discover that Brienne is the Baphomet.
Yeah, among other things, she's Baphomet. We went into the etymology of Baphomet, and what it really means is Baphometus, like baptism of wisdom, with Metis being the original goddess of wisdom before Athena. So yeah, I mean it fits very well for our island Brienne here.
And generally speaking, this is like the wisdom that comes from alchemy. And the philosophical concept behind alchemy is duality and understanding the harmony that comes from duality. And so this is a big theme of the story. What can you say? And a lot of the heroic characters like Jon and Daenerys are doing various kinds of merging of opposites. You notice Jon and Dany, they have the color symbolism that's hard to miss. Dany, pale silver, pale everything, black dragon with red eyes. And then Jon is all black and he's got a white wolf with red eyes. So like there's a thing happening here. Song of Ice and Fire. But just to give you guys, to back up for a second and give you an idea of what you can expect for the next 3 to however... Let's not set expectations. However many hours the number says below this stream if you're watching afterward. Here's what you're going to get. We're going to talk about Brienne, the character, from the perspective of archetypes and symbolism and how that frames who she is. And there's going to be a lot of Greek goddesses, essentially. That's the short answer. A lot of Greek goddesses, but we're also going to get into Galladon of Morne and Tarth and George's symbolism that he has imbued Brienne and her house with. And then we're going to go to analyzing Brienne's story. And we've basically got some of her best scenes and quotes lined up. A lot of Brienne's story, Sean, has to do with her past. And these 3 suitors and this prank that was played on her at Storm's End. It's very traumatic. And so we're going to get into that with some of the quotes. So yeah, and the other thing is we'll have a surprise guest joining us in the second part of today's stream to add a little extra perspective to the story analysis. And that will be a new guest that you have not met. So stay tuned for that. Yeah. So what's your basic feel on Brienne? I think Maynard Plum said something to me when we started talking about her, which is that Gwendoline Christie definitely like brought more attention to this character, you know? Oh, you've gone silent. I can't hear you.
Yeah, I muted myself. I'm one of the family. But yeah, it's Brienne is one of the most symbolically and narratively detailed and complete characters in the series. And Gwendoline Christie was an amazing actress who she's like one of those characters like Bronn where they had to make the character bigger, had to appear bigger in the narrative because the actor did such a good job of bringing charisma to the role and really making people like the character.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that ultimately we saw Brienne and Jaime up north participating in the last battle, bravely fighting, and this is foreshadowed by Jaime's Weirwood Stump dream, which I didn't quote in this outline, but of course we all remember it. Essentially, Jaime ends up in the bowels of Casterly Rock, and after having a little chat with his father and Cersei and all that, the scene morphs into some sort of last hero versus the others kind of thing, where Jaime and Brienne have flaming swords, blue and silver, instead of red and black. In the dream world, we've got blue and silver. Almost reminds you of the sword Dawn and that sort of symbolism, but they have flaming swords, and along comes the Kingsguard. some of the ghosts of Jaime's past, but they're described like the others. And so, I've done a whole stream on that dream, actually, breaking it down. But the most obvious interpretation of it is that Jaime and Brienne will end up with, Lightbringer weapons or just fighting against the others. Will they be flaming swords? Will it be dragon glass, Valyrian steel? Obviously it seems like these are the dream versions of Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper, kind of. Since those are the swords that Jaime's associated with. And we got this thing with twin swords. But yeah, so what do you think? Just to get into Winds of Winter predictions right off the bat, like, you think it's going to end up something like in the show where those two will end up at the Wall or at Winterfell or something?
So yes, I'm gonna really get into it here. You know me, I'm always very cautious with predictions. I'm not cautious on this one. I'm very much convinced that they're gonna have a duel in.
Oh, a duel. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, they're gonna be fighting, not fighting.
Okay.
And in Lady Stoneheart's cave, I think Lady Stoneheart is going to resurrect Jaime and die in the process.
Interesting.
And I think he's going to become basically the leader of the Brotherhood without banners, kind of in imitation of the symbolism he's been showing as like a Night's Watch Lord Commander. And he may actually, I think he'll probably join the Night's Watch when the series, at the end of the series.
That would be sick, nasty, interesting. I definitely think there's a big fight coming. And we're going to talk about the idea of Brienne having to go against her oath to Catelyn. Catelyn's pushing the limits of it, quite frankly. But I hadn't thought about Jaime getting resurrected. Obviously, this is a possibility. Beric passed on his flame of life to Stoneheart. Stoneheart doesn't need to hang around forever. I don't think she's going to meet Jon, and I don't really understand that idea. Like, she can't make it all the way to the north. That's just too far for her to travel, and Jon's not coming that far south. I really don't think that's going to happen. She may live long enough to see Arya. That's the one I could see. Maybe Arya gets back in time to put her out of her misery. Because remember, this Jaime Brienne thing, it could go in a loop. What Stoneheart and Brienne are trying to do with Jaime is use him to take back Riverrun. They're going to command him to do something that's going to help them take Riverrun back from the Frey Lannister alliance. Who is it? Which Frey is it?
So it's the Frey who's a Lannister. It's so Cleos Frey's son, I think. So Cleos is
it Cleos Frey's son or dad? Because Cleos is dead. We know that.
Yeah, Cleos is dead. I think it's Cleos' son. So Cleos' mom is Jenna Lannister, and then so Cleos' son is part Lannister, and they. Am I chat? Do we have confirmation on any of this? Edwin Frey is Edwin Cleos' son.
Cleos' dad, I bet. Oh, Emmon.
Emmon?
It's Emmon Frey. Yeah, he's older. He can't be. He's Cleos' dad. Yeah, Cleos is younger.
Cleo's dad. Okay, so I had it backwards. Okay.
Not Cleo's dad. I'm Cleo's dad. Cleos's dad.
I should know better. This is me failing all of everything I've ever learned in French again. Because Cleos means like clay. There's a Latin root there. It's key.
Cleo is the key to my sanity or happiness. At least putting her away at night is. In any case, shout out to thank you for the Cleo emojis in the chat. So look, I feel like we've already lost our way, Sean. I don't know what we're talking about. Okay,
no,
so
but we will come back to that. The French I failed because that's important.
My point was that Jaime and Stoneheart, or Jaime and Brienne, are going to be forced to go out on some sort of mission. They will probably come back to the cave. It may be that Brienne will be the hostage and Jaime has to go and do something. But there will be a period of time where Riverrun is retaken, and then they will end up back in the cave. And that by that time, Arya could be there. Obviously, Arya's in Braavos and needs to... We don't know how George is timing all this, but yeah, I do. That's an interesting theory that Jaime could be whited. We don't really need Jaime's POV forever. I'm trying to think if there's any like plot issues with that.
Well, I don't. I guess the idea is like, you have a pretty clear Azor Ahai parallel with Beric Dondarrion. You have a pretty clear, undead Night's Queen Nissa with Catelyn. And so there needs to be a last hero birthed from that. The whole passing of his, seed of life is sexual metaphor between Beric and Lady Stoneheart. And so the next one would be, looking like birthing a Lightbringer. And Jaime is kind of our crappy Lightbringer in the same way that
Well, given the idea that the dream, going back to where we started with the dream, they have those flaming swords in a cave. So obviously, like, will this in like if the best way to light a flaming sword is to have a fire white like Beric light the thing on fire. So for this really to for there to be flaming swords in Stoneheart's cave, somebody's either got to stab Stoneheart, Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa like, and come out with a flaming sword, or Jaime could be whited, and then he could light his own sword like Beric did. Either one of those could happen.
And I agree, she does get a sword in her.
The Stoneheart really like sword in the stone. It seems like there's a metaphor coming there. So, an Arthurian reference, I should say.
Yeah, the guy who's knighted by Arthur Dane shoves the sword in the Stoneheart.
There it is, coming soon to a live stream, Winds of Winter analysis live stream near you. So, okay. So, we're going to start off with a couple of translations here, some etymology. As we know, George puts a lot into his etymology. Sean, give us the breakdown of Brienne or Brianna and Tarth.
So mainly what we looked at is Brienne is the feminine of Brian, and it means like high or noble. And there is, a big deal made about the fact that Brienne is nobility, largely because as a noble woman, she is expected to act a certain way, which she of course chooses not to. And then Tarth, the main etymology we were looking at was kind of Welsh derivative, and Tarth means like a haze or a fog or a mist, which makes a whole lot of sense if you are on an island in the middle of a very stormy corridor of the sea.
And interestingly, it in Irish it ends up meaning mist and fog and haze, but the original Proto-Celtic word has to do with evaporation and dryness and thirst. So fog and mist, it's water that has evaporated. So there's a little slippery conceptual thing there. But it's interesting. We see this it feels like George is playing with this in this quote here, where it says, she dreamed that she was lying in a boat, her head pillowed on someone's lap. And this is when she's imprisoned and on the way to Stoneheart. There were shadows all around them, hooded men in mail and leather, paddling them across a foggy river with muffled oars. So it's very river Styx. We're in the underworld. It's a foggy river. And yeah, again, Tarth means haze, mist, fog. And so she's drenched in sweat. So she's perspiring and evaporating, burning, yet somehow shivering too. So this is the ice and fire symbolism. And she's literally evaporating. And then again, the fog was full of faces. Beauty, whispered the willows on the bank, but the reeds said, freak, freak. Brienne shuddered. Stop, she said. Someone make them stop. Sounds like a bad dream.
It rhymes with reek.
What's that?
It rhymes with reek.
It does. She kind of did get reeked by Biter, honestly.
Yeah.
We were just talking about what's worse. We're not going to read the Biter scene, by the way. We've done that before. Awful. So we're not going to do that. And yeah, so this is, you can see the fog is the fog of the underworld. The faces are coming out of it. It's clinging to this river Styx. And by the way, apologies. I made up a new Greek deity called Chiron. There's no, it's Chiron or Chiron or something like that. I totally butchered that. Apologies. Don't say that. Don't do as I say or do. You want to look that up. So
we do our research reading. We don't always look at how things are pronounced, and everything is in 27 languages. We're sorry. I wasn't participating in this one directly, but I did at least 6 while we were working on this essay.
And so Konstantinos Petrikos, who sounds like he would know, says it's Hiron. Hiron. So it's actually a silent K. So says he. The news has chirons on the bottom, so it's a little bit different than that. The boatman, that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Well, Greek versus ancient Greek also is at play here.
Chiron. Chiron is it's closer than Chiron, so don't. It's not a sh sound. That's totally wrong.
To be clear, we're not talking about Charon the ferryman, even though we're having a Styx scene. He's talking about his video where he was talking about Chiron the centaur.
No,
and
not the centaur. What? I was talking about the ferryman, not the centaur.
That's Heron? Okay, no.
Or maybe it's the centaur that is the silent H. Is that what you're saying? I don't know.
That's what they said in the chat.
CHI is like an X, as in Mexico. It's a breathy sound. Chiron. Well, there's a centaur and there's a boatman. Yeah. So I was trying to correct my pronunciation of the boatman. I haven't gotten to the centaur yet. I don't know if we're helping at all. Well, the point is, I said Chiron, and that's wrong. That's not a person. So, how do you say the boatman, Sean, to your best of your knowledge?
I thought it was Charon, but I would certainly trust. We have apparently two different Greek people in the chat who know better than me.
Yeah, Sharon is not in the chat. It's not Sharon. There's no Sharon here.
This is like that Step Brothers scene. They have the Pan dilemma.
I don't remember that.
Her name was Pam, but they were getting confused and they're really dumb. But and I feel dumb right now.
Clover says it's a good thing he doesn't run on Beetlejuice rules. We would have summoned him. Yeah, I forgive you, David. Let's move on. All right, good call. So, here's another one about Tarth and the fog. I'll go ahead and kick this one for us, Sean.
Okay. The Red Fork was wide and slow, a meandering river of loops and bends dotted with tiny wooded islets and frequently choked by sandbars and snags that lurked just below the water's surface. Brienne seemed to have a keen eye for the dangers, though, and always seemed to find the channel. When Jaime complimented her on her knowledge of the river, she looked at him suspiciously and said, "I do not know the river. Tarth is an island. I learned to manage oars and sail before I ever sat a horse."
Did you just give Brienne the Jaime voice?
No.
Okay.
I'll give you the Jaime voice later. Don't worry.
All right. So the point is, we're going to get into some mermaid symbolism, and I just found this quote. It was like, oh, she actually is a very good swimmer, and puts that to good use in a scene that we will read. So very cool. And that's obviously in the third book, Storm of Swords, where they are navigating down the river away from River Run, and Brienne is expertly piloting. It's not easy to pilot a boat down a river and avoid any snags, but she knows how to read the river. So Charon or Charon.
It gives her that's kind of circular to the last quote that we were doing, where she is kind of the ferryman here.
Yeah, we see that a lot. Like Brienne represents justice, but then gets subjected to cruel justice of Mother Merciless. So yeah, there's a lot of that kind of thing going on for sure. So getting into the House Tarth sigil is where the symbolism starts. Actually, go ahead and talk about it. I'll pull it up so we can see it.
So it's really about what you were talking about earlier, the unity of ice and fire, the kind of commingling of opposites here. We have a first and fourth rows, a sun and splendor, and sun and moon, day and night, ice and fire symbolism, right? Blue backdrop with the moon, rose backdrop on the sun. It's all very consistent day and night imagery, and it also tracks pretty well for Brienne's personal story, where she's she has a lot of history with the rose. We talked about how she's kind of traumatized from a few events in her backstory, one of them involving her being given a rose or being given multiple roses at a different time, not things that she liked. She is Brienne the Blue in Renly's Rainbow Guard. So we have the blue moon up here on her sigil.
And yet she wields the red sword, Oathkeeper, which is a parallel to Azor High, associated with the bleeding star, being a sun sword, having the fire of the sun in it. And so, yeah, a lot of ice and fire symbolism through and through. And you can see basically that House Tarth is constructed as part of Brienne's backstory. And frequently that's the case with characters that are the only member of their house. Like all of House Dondarrion's symbolism is constructed to frame Beric. Okay? And George gives sometimes characters their own sigil, like Bloodraven, to help frame his symbolism. So this is very much part of Brienne's symbolism. It's the cycle. It's the harmony of opposites. You can see here. The quartering, really, all the juxtaposition and countercharging of it, like, really does, it's like a yin-yang. It's visually it has the same function. And this is by artist Katia Vecchio. And it's very cool. Red and blue, Brienne. The moon warrior got a blood moon here. So very cool.
I love that it's a blood moon.
Yeah. Shout out to Blood Moon. So essentially, like we said, this makes her kind of a Baphomet. And if anyone wants to I'll pull it up. Okay, why not? Let's see here. This is going to be funny, actually.
Grabbing the picture of it. Baphomet was, a pretty typical, father storm god from I don't think Semitic, but certainly a Middle Eastern culture. And what it eventually came to mean was basically the antithesis of Christianity. There's a commingling of male and female anatomy. He's a dude with all female and male parts, and he's a goat.
And you can see there's sort of a day-night thing going on. It looks like two crescents. One is probably supposed to represent the sun, I would imagine, even though it's a crescent. And he's got the right and left hand path. See the light and dark snakes intertwined. So it's a lot of harmony of opposites going on. This is Eli Lilly's Baphomet. It's a little freaky, and But the point is, again, the alchemical yin and yang concept. And let's see here.
Sorry, just a very small digression here. It's very interesting that Baphomet is the main inspiration for the Black Goat of Qohor. And Brienne has a very bad time with Vargo Hoat, the goat, who is from Qohor.
That's pretty funny. You're right. And shout out to Sour Billy in the chat. Obviously, Sour Billy, have you checked out my Fever Dream stream that Tim and I did? Because we had a lot of fun with that book. Obviously, you're a fan. Have I ever seen the real world image of Cernunnos and Shiva in the Baphomet? No, I have not, Stephen. I definitely have not.
But I mean, it would make sense. They are very similar figures.
Yeah, but Kali and Shiva are often depicted in a sort of harmony of opposites type of relationship. So,
yeah.
Now, obviously, Brienne has Venus symbolism. This is again like right on the front page of the news here. She's called the Beauty, and obviously that's Aphrodite, Venus, the morning star, and we see that Brienne wields the morning star. She has the sword, Oathkeeper, which symbolizes dawn, or symbolizes Lightbringer rather, and Lightbringer is named after Venus. It's a word for Venus as the morning star. And then of course they have Evenfall Hall on Tarth, and her dad, basically the ruling lord of Tarth, House Tarth, is named the Evenstar. So this, and they used to live in a place called Morne. So the old city's Morne. Now it's Evenfall. It's not subtle. It complements the day-night sun, moon thing. So Sean, can you explain where the left and right hand path comes from? I found this to be interesting, and you explained this to me, and I never understood it. So
basically, we all, almost every primitive culture, we looked up at a lot of different constellations depending on where you were in the world, but you always looked up at the sun, the moon, and Venus, right? So you see the morning star and the Evenstar cycle no matter where you are on Earth. So we tended to usually put a male god on the face of the sun. We associated the sun with a sun god. And when you have the morning star, this, something you've talked a lot about, the herald of the dawn, brings the day. Sometimes it's the sun's son who's even trying to become the king of the gods, usurp the sun god, whatever. That's the morning star, the sun's strong right hand. But then at nighttime, after the sun sets, you have the Evenstar, which is still the morning star, but it's in a different position. And because of, if you look at the orbit of Venus, it being inside between Earth and the sun, you're only going to see it after the sun sets or before the sun comes up, because it is always either being blocked out by the sun's light or it's not visible behind the sun. So the Evenstar being on the left every time, it's now associated, when it comes down to Earth, it's associated with the underworld. So you have this bright morning star ascending to the heavens. You have this Evenstar representing the underworld. And that's where a lot of our kind of stereotypes around left-handed people come from, aside from just, cleanliness in the habits that people used to have. Left, literally, it means sinister in Latin. Fighting sinister means fighting left-handed. Sinistra is left in Latin. So in the idea, it all comes back from the sinister Evenstar underworld deity, whether it's Christianity and it's Lucifer, falling from grace and becoming a god of the underworld, or whether it's any number of other Evenstar gods across different mythologies doing similar things. Oh, you are muted.
Drink, everyone. And so the thing to remember here is that most of this mythology is composed by people living in the northern hemisphere. So when you look to the north, the sunrise is on the right. That's the east. Okay? Picture yourself standing at the equator looking north. The sunrise is on your right, and the sunset is on your left. And so the left hand is associated with sunset, the moon, evening, and the Evenstar. And the right hand is associated with morning, the morning star, the sunrise. And so that's why the left-hand path is the path to the underworld and dark magic and all those kinds of things. So there you go. That's where it comes from. It's mythical astronomy. It's literally myth made up, based on astronomy. So that is very cool. And essentially that's what we see here with House Tarth. We see this cycle depicted by the fact that they used to live at Morne. This is ancient ruins. No one lives there anymore. And then now they live at Evenfall. But then we see the cycle with Brienne and her dad. Her dad is the Evenstar, and Brienne seems to have mostly morning star symbolism. Again, wielding the morning star in the tourney when we meet her. So, yeah, it's because the Evenstar and the morning star are the same thing, and they give birth to each other in the way that cycles do. So, day gives birth to night, etc.
So shout out to Sauron, who wields a morning star.
Yeah, that's some sinister Lucifer, son of the morning stuff right there. That's good stuff. So something that you figured out just yesterday that riffs on this, because all this morning star stuff, of course, one important morning star god is Aphrodite or Venus. And that is specifically what is being evoked when Brienne is called the beauty. And obviously it's ironic because she's perceived as ugly. Why do we have this in the chat?
Yeah, let's...
Can someone get rid of that in the chat? Thank you. And any second, mods. There it is. All right. All right, so... what were we saying? See, this always disrupts me when people are rude. I just don't appreciate it. In any case, everyone is so polite, and then one person comes along.
The Aphrodite.
Thank you,
Star.
Aphrodite. Right. So we've talked about this, where like George is using a lot of this Morning Star, Lucifer kind of symbolism with Azor Ahai and Lightbringer. But Dany, as an Azor Ahai figure and as a beautiful woman, it's obvious to give her Aphrodite and Venus symbolism. And so she does. She's got the starlight and sea foam line that we've talked about. So Brienne is kind of similar. Brienne is a hero figure, harmonizing ice and fire. And she is a woman. And so she has a lot of Venus and Aphrodite symbolism. Obviously, she's not beautiful, quote unquote, according to societal standards on the outside, but inside, she's obviously one of the most beautiful characters. And she does have beautiful eyes, as Jaime points out upon meeting her very quickly. I will just say. And you noticed something interesting about Jaime's name.
And I'm kind of ashamed it took me this long, because I took almost 10 years of French. So Jaime is spelled weird by George, which he misspells more common names to make them his own fairly often, or to do a different linguistic route. In this case, it means j'aime, which is I like or I love. So she's screaming out Jaime's name because she's in love with him. And of course, she's representing a goddess of love here. And in every way, really, in every scene she is in, there is an Aphrodite call out. Another big epithet of Aphrodite is Lady of the Roses. So her getting presented with roses to these people trying to marry her is also an Aphrodite thing.
And she hates it.
She hates it.
It's great. Yeah, it's really funny. But roses are very strong. As we got a whole section. Red Ronnet, we're coming for you. We are coming for you. So that's really funny. She's calling out Jaime's name. She's kind of saying like, I love, without, it's almost like saying I am love in one sense, which is what Aphrodite is. And it's also saying, yeah, she's saying who she loves. It's Jaime. And it represents their relationship. So that's pretty clever. J'aime, je t'adore, all that stuff. So very cool. And there is a sort of a Arthurian French medieval vibe to a lot of the Jaime, Brienne, Cersei triangle stuff, as well as the Brienne Sansa hero, I need a hero to come rescue me kind of stuff, which we'll get into.
Yeah, there's a vibes-based application of which Arthurian authors he puts where, and this is definitely the French version with Jaime and Brienne. Who Brienne? That's spelled in the French way. You feminize something by putting an ne at the end of it if it ends in n. So that, Mary says très chrétien de toi is very much chrétien de toi.
That's right. And probably a good place to mention one of the reasons why I changed my name to David Lightbringer. David means beloved, and Lightbringer means Venus. So my name actually means beloved of the goddess Venus, which is...
It's aspirational.
It's where I like aspirational. Absolutely. It's where I want to be. So, yeah. That's part of the idea. So, okay. And then Selwyn has some interesting etymology, which I will let you explain it since you researched it.
He's got a few different things going on. It's kind of a mishmash, but Selwyn is pretty directly taken from a conflation of Celtic and Latin.
Downtown Clanny Brown says she wants to be beloved of Kratos.
Which Kratos? The one actually from Greek mythology, or the one from God of War?
You'll have to explain the difference sometime, but go back to Selwyn. I'm sorry. I had to respond to that.
He's good. So Selwyn pretty evenly tracks to a Latinized Celtic root, Sylvanus, which is like, it's, of nature, of the woods. It's all very, very green man in the tradition that George has created.
And that complements the Athena and Artemis, goddess. Get those two mixed up. Which one is associated with wild animals?
So Artemis.
Okay.
She's the huntress.
Right. Right.
And there's obviously a conflation between Selene, who is an older moon goddess, and Artemis, who had a lot of moon associations, but she really became the goddess of the moon when she became Diana in Roman tradition. But there is definitely a moon goddess idea in both. So,
And of course, just
Selwyn
to sum up the complexity of Greek myth, there's a couple reasons why it's complex. One, you have Proto-Indo-Europeans moving in with their mythology and meeting Anatolian farmers who have local mythology. And they really had a keen eye for syncretism. And so they would identify commonalities and they would end up merging gods. And they kept doing that even to the days when they started intermingling with the Egyptians. And they were syncretizing Greek and Egyptian gods. So you'll see a lot of gods that have overlapping ideas. And over time, those associations shift as one god or goddess becomes less popular and more popular. Sometimes a goddess goes from being local, just tied to one shrine or an island or something, and they become part of the wider pantheon. So it's pretty fluid and complex. It's a lot of fun. We'll center on the concepts, but we're basically going to talk about almost all the Greek goddesses today.
Right. Well, and this was kind of a distinction I really liked because they're associating Selwyn with Selene. And that makes sense because Selene is not a maiden. And Selwyn is obviously not a virgin if he's had, multiple children and Brienne is still surviving. Whereas we see a lot of Artemis in Brienne. And Artemis is a moon goddess, but she is a maiden. And that's something that's emphasized a lot about Brienne. The fact, both mockingly as you're a virgin and also Brienne being a maiden.
The Maid of Tarth. Can you imagine that, having your virginity being part of your nickname as a 20-year-old grown-ass adult? Like, come on now.
Yeah. Medieval times were strange.
But getting back to the Arthurian thing, like, when Jaime thinks quickly and protects Brienne's maidenhood, essentially, when they're imprisoned by the Bloody Mummers, with the whole sapphire ruse and talking about she's worth her weight in sapphires and this and that. It is very chivalrous and courtly. So it's, yeah.
Well, and he's one of the foremost Lancelot figures in the series. He's cuckolding the king. He's got, it's damn near every scene he's got Lancelot stuff going on. And he's basically replaced by somebody they talk about how much looks like him, his cousin Lancel. So it's, not subtle in any other ways.
Never thought about that, actually.
I have a whole video on that stuff. It was my first ever Patreon video.
So she was born in 280, which means that she's actually about 20.
Mm-hmm.
So she's young. And I don't know if you want to get into specifying what her, how we classify her sexual preference in modern parlance. She's obviously in love with both Renley and Jaime. That could be romantic more than sexual. We don't know. Hard to say. It's not really important, I don't think. But the main thing is that she is definitely, to be honest, she's like a Westeros teeny bopper. Think about it. Like, she has posters of Renley and Jaime on her wall. Two of the hunkiest dudes around.
She would never miss a Renley concert. Renley and the Rainbow Guard.
The chat is cooking. I'm not going to repeat everything that you're saying, but I see you and I appreciate you. So, yeah, sponsored by Manscaped. We'll have to get that going.
Oh God, I wish.
So, okay, where were we? Beauty and the Beast. We'll come back to Brienne, and we're gonna, because she's from the Sapphire Isle, and that is a clear reference to the Sapphic Isle. So we're coming back to that. Put a pin in it. Gerald Garcia, French place name Brie, is derived from the Gaulish Brisia, meaning hill. Brienne equals a secret Lannister bastard. Oh, a hill, or just a tall lady. There's a lot of hill symbolism. I mean, a lot.
Yeah, it's for the she, living under the hills, the hollow hills.
The Brie living
also,
under the hills.
Yeah, for barrows.
The ice Brie.
Right.
Okay. Brie is is that a blue cheese?
I think it's an actress.
So I think it's probably a reference to Brian and Brianna, which means noble, because her highborn, her blue blood, if you will, is a big part of her character. She's basically Dunk, but highborn, and a woman. Also.
Yes. Yeah.
And by the way, I was going to wear my Kevin Durant jersey since he just got traded, because Kevin Durant, like Brienne, is very tall. And both Brienne and Kevin Durant became a warrior when no one wanted them to.
Oh, that's
workshopped that all morning.
Hey, he's
came to me in the shower.
He's going to rocket off into the atmosphere like a good morning star.
But in all seriousness, Brienne is 6.5 feet tall. That's the point of bringing it up. George has said she's taller than Jaime, and the same height as Robert, who's said to be 6.5 feet. George also said that she's much heavier than Jaime. So not only taller, but like more massive. She's huge. She's not just tall. Like a 6 foot tall woman feels very tall. She's 6.5 feet. She's a giant. Okay, so just want to make that clear. Very tall.
Well, and they remark upon she has wide shoulders, wide hips. So she's on a big frame, not just she's not got any extra weight on her. She's, in fighting shape, but she is THICC as a castle wall.
The chat is calling you out for your blue lighting, Sean. Where's your ring light?
I can turn this down a little bit.
He was trying to get the red and blue going on.
Oh, don't worry. This will get sexy later. We'll turn the lighting way down.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know. Okay. So the point about somebody who's 6.5 feet tall with broad shoulders is velocity and inertia when you're swinging a big piece of metal. Strength is part of it, but some of it is just the physics of being able to pick up something bigger and swing it in a bigger arc. Like the force of Brienne's blows is just, monstrous. So we're going to read her fight scenes. It's important to recognize that. But Beauty and the Beast. Obviously, this is George cooking here, combining the beauty, Aphrodite, Venus symbolism, and going, Beauty and the Beast. It's an obvious part of Brienne and Jaime's story. And what's fun, Sean, is that they are constantly flipping around with this beast, right? Like, Brienne is not beautiful on the outside, but she is beautiful on the inside. She also has an inner beast that she lets out when she fights. Like, she is a beast when she fights. Similarly, Jaime acts beastly at times and looks like a beast in captivity when his beard grown out and he's all ragged and stuff. But he's also regarded as beautiful most of the time, before he's roughed up a bit. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing, and there's a lot of role reversal, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like they're both self-contained yin yang, and just bumping into each other here until they kind of gain a healthy respect for each other.
Yeah, the chat is having fun. Again, I will say I will not repeat everything, but I see you. Marcus Went, do you think Brienne will break her oath and have to kill Lady Stoneheart? Yes, and that's where we're getting. Seems like that's where the Oathkeeper theme is coming to, essentially. But again, Stoneheart really pushing the contract there pretty far, so arguably justified. But we'll get to that. So another thing about the Beauty and the Beast, Brienne eventually kind of sees what beauty there is in Jaime. We'll talk about the bathtub confession, but she's sort of calling him to be the best version of himself, let's say. He's literally despondent and near suicidal in captivity, and she's like sort of pulling him back from the brink. But she's also a major part of inspiring him to like just try to be good, beginning with turning around to save her from the bear pit. But even before then, like he really begins thinking about Cersei and himself based on his observations of Brienne. So it's an interesting sort of mirror effect.
Yeah, well, and I mean, George loves Hans Christian Andersen. In a lot of ways, Hans Christian Andersen and Brothers Grimm are the cradle for what we're doing in terms of recognizing comparative mythology, looking at different cultures, how they kind of saw a lot of the same things. So Beauty and the Beast it's just so par for the course for George. Like combining these themes with his other themes is perfect.
Yeah, and they've also got like, if you think about Beauty and the Beast, they found this period of happiness, and then what happens? The mob comes for them, right? And
Right.
it's similar, like Jaime and Brienne, society doesn't accept them, but like they have this sort of weird moment where they have this intimacy and this relationship that forms, and then it is torn apart by the mob. Yeah, essentially.
So you haven't brought this up, and I'm wondering if well, I'm going to bring it up here because I think maybe you didn't put it down for a reason, but George wrote for Beauty and the Beast, the TV series.
I just forgot.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, from 1987 to 1990, he was one of the main writers for the Beauty and the Beast TV series.
And
So
there you have it.
He's definitely hip to the Beauty and the Beast story, and he's definitely willing to include it.
And of course, yeah, and then, like I was saying, the true beauty is the heroic ideal. As I was saying at the beginning of the story, Brienne exemplifies that, doing what's right, even if there's not an obvious payoff waiting for you, even if people aren't going to thank you. That's the path for Jon and Dany and all the other heroes. It's a thankless road to walk, but it's important, and she shows us that. So that is her beauty, her heroism, her virtue, and her honor. And so Jaime is kind of somewhere in the middle of this Beauty and the Beast thing. Cersei is like full beast. Her beauty is purely out, superficial on the outside. She's all beast on the inside. Brienne is the opposite, and Jaime is sort of caught in the middle. So, why is she called Brienne of Tarth, even though her last name is Tarth and she's noble? So I wanted to talk about this. Is it a way for her to pretend to be lowborn? I don't think so. But what's weird is her name is Brienne Tarth. But it kind of sounds weird to say that because we always say Brienne of Tarth. We don't say Jon of Stark. But Tarth is also a place and a house. So maybe that's why, because it's a place.
Well, and it's a little bit weird because there are some houses who have the same name as their seat. That has happened before. Like House Blackmont of Blackmont, stuff like that. There are a number of them. It's actually fairly common. But Tarth is not a seat. It's the entire island. So that's what's kind of interesting here. That you don't really see a lot of.
The Will of Will, Derry of Derry.
Right.
Yeah, there's a few. They do say Stark of Winterfell, though.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, I'm not sure why. Maybe it just sounds cooler. But her name technically is Brienne Tarth. So, go ahead. I found a good Beauty and the Beast quote. You want to read this one here?
So let's see. Talk with Sir Cleos then. I have no word for monsters. Jaime hooted. Are there any monsters hereabouts? Hiding beneath the water, perhaps? In that thick of willows? And me without my sword? A man who would violate his own sister, murder his king, and fling an innocent child to his death deserves no other name.
And so we can see this is just Brienne identifying him as a monster. And she even calls him monster a couple of times. So they have this whole thing where they won't call each other by their names. It's very cute, very flirty. So, yeah. And then here we see this. Go ahead, since your voices are so key. So prime.
My name is Brienne, not wench. What do you care what a monster calls you? My name is Brienne, she repeated, dogged as a hound. Lady Brienne? She looked so uncomfortable that Jaime sensed a weakness. Or would Sir Brienne be more to your taste? No, I fear not. You can trick out a milk cow in crupper, crinnet, and chamfron, and barge her in all silk, but that doesn't mean you can ride her into battle.
And so there you see, they're playing pretty outwardly with this Beauty and the Beast wordplay. Again, it's right on Front Street, right on page 1. So. And we've done a couple of rereads of these chapters. They're fun to read. Like, we could throw all the notes out and just read Jaime and Brienne dialogue for 3 hours, and it'd probably be just as good of a stream, honestly. Like, it's really good. It's charged. All of it is charged. There's so much awkwardness. There's like, they're both repulsed of each other, but attracted to each other at the same time and for different reasons. So
it's also one of a number of places where she's called a cow, and it's there's a definite parallel there to Io from Greek mythology, because again, she's all Greek
and lunar symbolism in general. Sure.
Yeah.
So, and then later when she pushes the boulder off the cliff, it's the size of a cow. So there's some mythical astronomy there with moon cow boulders falling down and stuff. But let's explain why Brienne is Wonder Woman.
Yes.
You guys are going to like this.
These next 3 things are all kind of laced together. And Wonder Woman is an Amazon. She is from the Isle of Themyscira. So when we say Themis was was a Greek titan, or sometimes referred to as a goddess, but really a titan of wisdom. And the first wife, am I mixing these up?
No, divine
Themis.
justice and order, right. Themis.
Yeah, right. So she was a goddess of divine wisdom. Zeus married her.
And that's where Athena comes from, right?
Right. Zeus consumed her, and then she either popped out as kind of reborn as Athena, or Athena as their child, or whatever. Zeus was trying to avoid a prophecy, but the point is wisdom, right?
And so essentially when they're creating the Wonder Woman is heavily based on the Greek legends of Amazons and stuff. And so they've named Themyscira after Athena's mom. That's the easy way to say it. But then backing up, Brienne comes from the Sapphire Isle. And so explain this part of it.
So Lesbos is an isle in Greece. It's the 3rd largest island in Greece. And it's mainly the reason that we call it being a lesbian is because of this island and its association with a very famous poet. So the island is Lesbos, which had no association with female homosexuality. Mm-hmm. But then there was a very famous female Greek poet named Sappho. And she was so influential that even as a woman, 6th or 7th century BC, she was able to become so well known that she just became part of the culture. And there were a lot of homoerotic themes in Sappho's poetry, which, to be clear, is lyric poetry. So it's meant to be accompanied by music. So she's writing songs.
Okay.
And there's actually a parallel to that in House Tarth. But
well, Brienne has a very good singing voice and knows a lot of songs.
Well, and there's a Lucian Tarth who writes a ballad of the tragedy of the 2 twins who killed each other during the Dance of the Dragons.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So
Eric and Arik.
She wrote lyric poetry. Almost all of it is lost just because it's been so long. But the one complete thing we have is the Ode to Aphrodite. So we have Aphrodite, we have lesbians, we have female sexuality, all coming from an island. And in fact, there's a whole, she throws herself in the sea, and because of ferrymen, she falls in love with the ferryman.
So Brienne, so as Kolnitsky points out, obviously Brienne is not a lesbian. As we said, she's very much in love with the hunkiest dudes around. It's actually as straight as you could be to be in love with Jaime. Renly's complicated, but she doesn't know. Obviously, Renly's. I was thinking about. We'll get to Renly and Brienne. They have a very interesting relationship. I wonder if Renly's gaydar was going off, and that's partly why he was so. It wouldn't be gaydar, I guess, but So this is a point I want to make. There is a confluence here. Brienne is not lesbian, but she obviously is gender nonconformist. Those are not the same thing, but they often go together. And thematically, from a story perspective, they are similar because they are essentially reasons why you don't fit into society. And I actually relate to Brienne, even though I'm a straight white guy, because I have massive ADHD. And it often makes me feel like an outsider, makes me feel not understood, and things like that. So I relate to Brienne quite a bit for that reason. And so I think what George is doing here is two things. One, her gender nonconformity is similar in a medieval society as being a lesbian. It's something that is frowned upon, and it makes her an outcast. But more importantly, it's this Amazon Wonder Woman link, because it is inspired directly by the Isle of Lesbos. Isn't that what's essentially the connection?
Yeah, and there's always been, wrongfully or rightfully, an association between the Isle of Lesbos and the Amazons, who were female warriors. Tons of stories about the Amazons and related stories in other mythologies, but it's
kind of also assumed in the same way that, like, up at the Night's Watch, where it's only dudes, you kind of assume like some of them are becoming friendly with each other, right?
Some of them are prison married.
That's for the Night's Watch. That actually is appropriate because it is kind of like a prison. It's a little nicer on Themyscira, but you don't see a lot of men around is a point. So
yeah, hey, everybody gets bored at Camp Themyscira.
But the point is that Brienne is an Amazon, and so this is why there's a reference to the Sapphic Isle in her story, is to lead us on this journey, essentially, to the Amazons, which very obviously Brienne is. And even Wonder Woman has mostly red and blue symbolism, like Brienne. And then it's spiced with gold, the gold crown and the gold lasso and stuff. And that matches to the sun symbolism in Brienne's sigil, as well as her straw-colored hair, perhaps. Well, and Wonder Woman even has a red star on her crown. So
and look at Brienne she's got her blue or cobalt armor, if you wanted to get, you mentioned a lot of alchemical in her appearance anyway, but she's wearing the blue. She's got the black and red sword, Waves of Night and Blood, right? Mm-hmm. But it's gold hilt. It was meant to be a Lannister sword. So
True.
it's got that
right.
golden, just
you're
like
right. And so we see a couple other things. Wonder Woman, of course, does have a magic sword. It's called the God Killer sword. And Brienne has a magic sword, which is very much played up as a magic sword, because there's the whole Galladon of Morne legend, what we're about to get into, where it's, we should have used the magic sword. And Nimble Dick's like, if you got a magic sword, you got to use it. And then Brienne finally does use it. So pretty obvious analogy there. And then there's the lasso. So Wonder Woman's lasso, of course, forces people to tell the truth. Brienne is hanged in order to force her to tell the truth, but she's also associated heavily with honor, truth, and justice, and all of those themes like Wonder Woman is. So pretty straight on correlation. Oh, and then the most obvious one, Wonder Woman leaves her island to walk amongst the realm of men, where she's basically stronger than everyone. And Brienne comes from an island to Renly's battle camp and beats everyone up. So,
well, in a lot of times in a lot of different runs of Wonder Woman, what ends up happening is she joins the Justice League, but there's kind of a misunderstanding just to kind of, brace that landing, right? So she ends up having to fight the only person who can go toe-to-toe with her, Superman. And so we see Brienne leave her isle, and she has to fight Jaime, and it's pretty much an even matchup. And then, well, it does not go as smoothly as the Justice League comics usually do, but it's a similar idea.
I didn't think about that, but yeah, Jaime can serve as Superman in a pinch. So,
Superman,
let's go. Okay,
so the guy who gets his power from the sun.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess he does, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's a battery.
So Galadon of Morne and the Just Maid. This is a huge part of Brienne's story and her mythical backstory. Galladon of Morne is also a really cool legend. It's just one of the cooler little folk tales that George has made up. So I will do Nimble Dick, obviously, and you will do Brienne. Sir Galahoof, what? Never heard him. Why is he so bloody perfect?
Sir Galadon was a champion of such valor that the maiden herself lost her heart to him. She gave him an enchanted sword as a token of her love. The Just Maid, it was called. No common sword could check her, nor any shield withstand her kiss. Sir Galadon bore the Just Maid proudly, but only thrice did he unsheathe her. He would not use the maid against a mortal man, for she was so potent as to make any fight unfair.
Sorry, I was just getting a message from our third guest. Crab thought that was hilarious. The perfect knight? Perfect fool, it sounds like. What's the point of having some magic sword if you don't bloody well use it?
Honor, she said. The point is honor.
That only made him laugh the louder. Sir Clarence Crab would have wiped his hairy arse with your perfect knight, milady. If they'd ever met, there'd be one more bloody head sitting on the shelf at the Whispers, you ask me. I should have used the magic sword. It'd be saying to all the other heads, I should have used the bloody sword.
Brienne could not help but smile. Perhaps, she allowed. But Sir Galadon was no fool. Against a foe 8 feet tall, mounted on an oryx, he might well have unsheathed the Just Maid. He used her once to slay a dragon, they say.
Nimble Dick was unimpressed. Crackbones fought a dragon too, but he didn't need no magic sword. He just tied his neck into knots every time it breathed fire, it roasted his own arse.
A lot of my daddy can beat up your daddy here.
A little bit. My hero can beat up your hero, yeah. All right. Well, that loosened the... All right, so there's obvious themes relevant to Brienne's story here. The point is honor. That could be the title of the live stream. You know, that's the point of Brienne's stories. Heroism and honor, justice, knighthood. It's interesting that her hero, Galadon, is called the perfect knight. And that doesn't seem like an accident, because this idea of being a perfect knight is basically impossible. And it's specifically Jaime's story and the Hound's story and Barristan and Brienne and Dunk that show us this impossibility of honoring the knightly vows in a corrupt society, right?
Right. I mean, the idea of a perfect knight is the white to a black and white morality. And the world exists in shades of gray. And that's one of the major points that George is always trying to make, is that these decisions, you don't just decide to be good. You have to approach each situation, and it's difficult sometimes to navigate.
Yeah. It's the whole point of making the Kingsguard white knights and then showing how corrupt most of them are. You know, it's like there is no such thing. And Brienne is learning that. You know, same as Dunk. You know, we talked about this. Brienne and Dunk, they try to keep things simple, but they keep getting tangled up in complex things. Brienne is just looking for a noble cause, and a noble lord to serve so she can be a knight. She's trying to save a young girl, which seems like a noble task, saving Sansa. And both Catelyn and Jaime have charged her with this task separately, and that ends up bringing her into conflict between the two of them in that very unfair trial scene that we'll talk about. And similarly, Dunk, obviously every story has him getting involved in politics that are over his head. And so these characters are trying to use their morality and their moral compass, which is strong, but both are kind of naive. And so we see this clash as they're trying to navigate Westeros politics with this moral compass. And so George likes to show you the conflict. He's telling you do the right thing and be heroic, but he's showing you it's not easy. Sometimes there's nuance to it as well. Something like that.
Yeah.
it's a bit of an open question. I don't think it's like an open and shut case where he's just telling you, yeah, do the right thing and everything goes great. He's showing you like it can be really hard to do the right thing. I think that's the point. But
Yeah.
he's also just exploring the dynamic, I guess.
He's like, that one mom who, doesn't want you drinking, but if you're gonna, you drink at her house. You know what? Kids, just do your best. Try to stay hydrated.
And so yeah, and Sandor is a major part of this too. He's basically the cynical voice saying, "Oh, you can't. There's no such thing. All knights are killers and this and that." So it's a whole spectrum of opinions on this impossible task. Jaime talking about they make you swear and swear. So Galadon he's the perfect knight. He got his sword from the maiden herself, and he only uses it against magical foes. He's too honorable to use it against a normal foe. So he's very honorable. Now, Jaime giving Brienne Oathkeeper is a pretty clear flip of Galladon and the maiden herself, right? Galladon is the warrior, and we have the maiden, one of the deities of the seven, associated with a constellation and perhaps the moon. So this is some sort of star maiden giving the warrior Galadon the sword. But then we flip it around, and Jaime, who's described as the warrior himself, exact parallel to the language the maiden herself, Jaime the warrior himself gives Brienne, who's the maid of Tarth, the magic sword. So it's a direct inversion.
And she falls in love with him about it. Jem.
Indeed she does.
Yeah, look at him over there. He's an archetype. He's a little gemstone emperor.
A gemstone. Jesus, dude. And her from the Sapphire Isle, which is a gemstone.
Yeah.
Ned Stark would have liked Brienne. Brienne is very Stark coded. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, Ned is another character who is honorable, but a little bit naive and a little bit foolish. And we see him caught up in the gears of Westeros. Now, even though Ned gets ground up in those gears in King's Landing, because he's led a virtuous and honorable life, people are still rallying to his cause in Book 5 in a snowstorm to go save the Ned's daughter, right? That's because of the kind of lord that Ned has been. And all of his kids have what would Ned do bracelets. And they're constantly using his example as a moral compass. And they're going to be some of the heroes of the story. So this is George showing you, doing the right thing. You don't always get thanked for it. Not always an immediate payoff. But it makes a difference. It makes all the difference, right?
Yeah. It's also like that whole speech with Big Bucket Wool about saving the Ned's little girl. That's one of the best speeches in the entire series.
Big bucket for president. So, cool thing. All right. So we've been talking about heroism and the Morning Star. The Galladon of Morne legend is pretty obviously some sort of flip of Sword of the Morning and Dawn and the Danes. So Galladon of Morne, who has a magic sword, and Dawn is a magic sword held by the Sword of the Morning.
Well, and beyond that, the name Galadon it's a clear riff on Galahad, who is the perfect knight in Arthurian lore. He is, where Lancelot was kind of looked at as the perfect knight for a while in Chrétien de Troyes, where there was some ambiguity about the morality of him sleeping with the king's wife, blah, 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 courtly love. But authors after that pushed back against that. They did not like the idea of him doing that. They found it to be very immoral. And they had bad things happen to Lancelot about it. And then they had Galahad basically replace him as the greatest of Arthur's knights, not only, more virtuous, but also the Grail Knight. So he's the one questing after the Grail, which is all very thematic of this. It's very thematic of Brienne, who's questing after, her Sansa. And, we have Dunk in a very similar position, who's, arguably also on a number of quests. And he starts his quest with a little grail, his little winged chalice shield from Sir Arlen. So again, it's perfect night stuff all the way down. These themes are everywhere in the chapters of not only the people like Dunk and Brienne who are trying to be perfect knights, but like you said, the people who are cynical, Jaime, Sandor, who are fighting against, who hate the idea of the perfect knight and basically what it's done to them.
You just cooked up a couple of things there. I had never put that together, that the winged chalice serves to outline the Dunk story and all the permutations of the Dunk story, i.e. Brienne and Sandor and all who are both descended from Dunk, in case you didn't know. Yeah, so putting the chalice there, it shows you this is an Arthurian themed story of knighthood. That makes a ton of sense. It really does.
Well, I do remember one of the first things not one of the first things, but the Cathars. You went into the Cathars and the whole idea of you and really Schmendrick back in the day, where you talk about, last hero is really a person in the same way that, you're looking at San Graal and
The Lightbringer is really a person, you mean to say.
What did I say?
Last hero.
Yes, sorry. Lightbringer is really a person.
That's not cryptic. He's obviously a person, but the idea of Lightbringer could refer to like the bloodline. Yeah, exactly.
Right. San Graal means Holy Grail. Sang Real, spelled the same way, but the space is in a different place, means a royal line. So that's the idea is the Holy Grail really a cup, or is the quest for the Holy Grail really a quest to discover the bloodline of Christ? And that's the idea that the Cathars had. And George is playing a similar idea with Lightbringer not really being a sword, with it really being a bloodline. And
Brienne is looking for a bloodline. She's looking for Sansa.
Right. Who is, and again, it's a secret bloodline, right? Sansa is disguised as Elaine Stone. So, and yeah, cooking.
Good stuff.
But yeah, in past that, God damn it, I just lost it.
We've up dope with scientists. I made you. That's what I totally threw you off. You had Migos lyrics going in your head.
Oh God.
You were talking about the Arthurian something, the Grail, the bloodline, Sansa.
Oh yeah, he even puts in a reference to the fact that it was the Cathars. One of the things that they used to say, it was like kind of an affirmation, is the error crept in translation, or rather the French translation of the error crept in translation. So he had Maester Aemon say that when he's talking about, whether Dany is the prince that was promised. It was supposed to be male or female. There's no gendered term for prince or princess in Valyrian. Once again, looking after a bloodline. So yeah, it's all very Arthurian and very perfect knight coded.
And so, continuing on with explaining Galadon of Morne and the Just Maid, we've given you the Galahad. And by the way, that's, if you think of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, that's why Sir Galahad goes to Castle Anthrax with all the willing women, and they're trying to tempt him, is because that's Galahad's character. He's untemptable, except for at the end. Let me go back and face the peril, just a little bit of peril. Yeah, that's where that comes from. So, okay, Galadon of Morne, like we said, sounds like it's all tied to Dawn. Now, the sword is called the Just Maid. And the Just Maid seems like a pretty clear reference to Virgo, the celestial virgin, who appears to be holding the scales of Libra. And that's where we get the image of Lady Justice, who is supposed to be, she's blind because of, she's unbiased, but she is supposed to be like representing purity, justice, honor, and virginity. Gets associated with that. It's it is what it is. And so basically, if you look in the sky, it does appear that Virgo is holding the scales of Libra. And so this is where we get this divine lady holding the scales of justice. And so the Just Maid, that's literally a description of Virgo. She is the Just Maid. Now, Brienne is also a maid who is obviously very just and is walking around dispensing justice with her sword. Which makes you think of Ned, of course, who dispenses justice with his sword, ice. Ice got melted down and turned into Oathkeeper, which is now Brienne's sword. So you can see these Stark-like themes of honor and justice that are linked between Brienne and Ned. It all goes back to Virgo. And then Virgo itself is based on some Greek mythology, which we're about to get into. Just put a pin in that. We'll talk about DK and, some other stuff. We have it in the notes. So, ladies, so that's essentially, this is a constellation. Remember I said that the maiden herself is kind of like a celestial maiden because the faith of the seven associates their gods with the seven celestial wanderers, which are the 5 planets visible from Earth and the sun and the moon. So the maiden is probably associated either with Venus, Aphrodite, or perhaps the moon. Hard to say. It could be either. We're not told, and either would make sense. But essentially what we've got here is the sword is coming from the stars, either way. So it's a star sword being given to a hero. That sounds a lot like the legend of Lightbringer and the legend of Dawn both, where we have Nissa, a magical woman performing a magical act that creates the magic sword and giving it to the hero. But we actually think these swords are meteor swords that come from the stars like Dawn. And of course, Bloodstone Emperor's got a meteor too. We don't need to get into that. But we can see the meteor sword, star sword idea echoed here with Galadon's sword. And the association with the potential association with Venus brings the Lightbringer concept back into it, as well as the link to Dawn and Sword of the Morning. So Galadon basically is a localized Westerosi myth that has somehow peeled off of the last hero in Azor Ahai. We know that there was a last hero in Westeros. We know he did have a magic sword. It was probably Dawn, last hero with Dragonsteel. And so if something like that really happened, this is just George imitating the permutations of myth. There's going to be variations of this legend all around Westeros. And so Galladon of Morne is pretty clearly an echo of the last hero story with Dawn. And that means that the founders of House Tarth probably have a connection to these people that settled Starfall, which would be people from the Great Empire of the Dawn, where they have the Mountains of the Morne.
Yeah, and that's a huge tangent, which we could probably spend a lot of time on. But real quick, so Edwin Evenstar, just wanted to clarify, is not a Tarth. So those are 2 separate houses. The Tarths are an Andal house who took over the Kingdom of Tarth before Tarth was literally ruled by people whose house name was Evenstar.
Oh, I see.
So
yeah. House Tarth is probably going to be then Andals who merged with that house, since they took up the name.
They kept Evenstar as a title. Like Selwyn Tarth is called the Evenstar.
Right.
So you got to assume that they married in the same way that they did in most of the rest of Westeros.
One would think so. And then Edwin Evenstar married Durin the Fair, tying that into more First Men blood.
Or his daughter married Durin the Fair.
Okay. That would make more sense. It's very controversial, Edwin and Durin.
They're bucking gender norms. They had to find their own island because Lesbos was only for women. It was a little bit gate kept with the ferryman. It was a whole thing.
Well done. So yeah, we're not going to go super deep on the Great Empire of the Dawn, but the point is, if House Tarth and Galladon of Morne is tied to the Danes and the last hero in Dawn, then the name Morne probably is from the same place. It's probably got a link back to the Great Empire of the Dawn and the Mountains of Morne. So that's pretty cool. And then, of course, Sapphire is a gemstone like the Gemstone Empress. So the other thing about Selwyn Tarth is that his name is 1 letter off from Serwyn. Serwyn of the Mirror Shield, like Galladon of Morne, is a legendary knight who shouldn't exist before knights were there. And they are both dragon slayers. Serwyn of the Mirror Shield kills a dragon Arax. And as we just heard Brienne say, Galladon slew a dragon with the Just Maid. So if the Just Maid is really a reference to Dawn, and Serwyn of the Mirror Shield is in the south, and the other dragon slayer is Davos Dane. Actually, no. I'm sorry. It's Davos Dragon Slayer, and then there's a Davos Dane. So Davos Dragon Slayer, potentially implied as a Dane. Could be. And all of this could mean that Dane is a Dragon Slayer sword. That is neither here nor there. Or Dawn, rather.
Dawn.
But
it's the same thing.
That is a total sidetrack. So the point is, Galadon of Morne's story, it outlines the themes of Brienne's story, and it links her into the Azor Ahai mythology, which makes sense because she has a bloody red Valyrian steel sword, and Jaime dreams of her wielding a flaming sword. So you can see how this is all coming together. Brienne is definitely going to be fighting the others, right, with the last hero crew, Jon and whoever else.
And again, we talk about, the Lightbringer sword really being a person. She has the sword. She's searching for a person. But when we look at this, there's a big theme of bloody swords. So a bloody sword is a beautiful thing. And sometimes that is a sexual metaphor. But sometimes it is, if the sword is a baby, if the sword, the Lightbringer is the last hero baby, it's a baby covered in bloody afterbirth. So in your quote earlier with Nimble Dick said, I would use the bloody sword. Because of course it has to be. You're muted.
And just as Lightbringer is a bloody sword because it is dyed red with Nissanissa's blood, Oathkeeper is dyed red after it is consecrated with Ned's blood. And we even see that Ilian Payne doesn't clean the sword, Ice. After executing Ned, Sansa observes that he has left the blood on the blade, which is very bad sword upkeep. But it's obviously, and Ilian Payne wouldn't even do that because he sharpens a sword all the time. This is George creating symbolism in a heavy-handed way. It's a bloody sword. It's consecrated. So yeah, Ned is very Nissa Nissa-like in that sense. And then this hero's sword, soaked with the blood of an innocent sacrifice, is now carried by Brienne. So let's get into some Greek myth here, Sean. Like we said, the Just Maid is a clear reference to Virgo, a celestial lady justice. And this comes, Virgo is associated with two different Greek goddesses. And you're muted. And you're still muted.
God, those were my best contributions today. Just in case I don't
burn
remember them.
Cancel the stream. Delete it.
So Virgo is the Latin name, and it is the constellation, where DK and Estrella are the goddess themselves. So DK... Oh.
Yep, go ahead. You're soloed. You're the star of the show. Go ahead.
Gotcha.
Baby.
Wow. I like it. DK basically inherited Estrella's backstory, and the idea is that there was a golden age of man, the first age of man, and then man started being wicked. This is starting to sound very like the Great Empire of the Dawn story of the Long Night, and she could no longer be a part of it, and she was the last god to leave Earth, and she left and decided to be a constellation, and the constellation is Virgo, and she is the goddess of justice, holding the scales of Libra, the scales of justice. And then later in her portrayal in the Roman version, really, the Roman syncretization of Greek mythology, she is usually portrayed as blind. So that's definitely some iconography that George has borrowed. There's kind of a conflation. DK is a daughter of the goddess of divine justice, Themis, we were talking about earlier, and Zeus, whereas Estrella is the daughter of two titans, one being Astraeus, a god of the stars, and God, who's the other one?
Eos. I robbed you of the
Eos
notes.
The Dawn. Of course, Eos the Dawn is the one.
Just testing you.
Um,
I'm trying out the controls. Hey guys, I'm gonna eventually integrate this in a regular and professional fashion. But yeah, it's like, I can, when I'm cooking, I can solo, and when Sean's cooking, I can solo, and then I can go back to how do I? There's a way to see. Yeah, I gotta get. How do we? Oh, that's right. Back here. There we are. And then we got to put Sean back. And
gives me a lot of time to pick my nose.
There's a way to. There we. So I'll eventually get. I meant to practice with this before I did it, but then I just hit the button just now impulsively. So eventually I'll do this professionally, and it'll be a whole thing. I'll make it more dynamic. But
Sounds good. So,
sorry, yeah, I'll try not to flip it so much that you get seasick. Only onions. So
I'll be fine.
I was
one.
lost there. I was caught in the Matrix for a second. So, DK and Estrella. So I love Estrella, and you mentioned the Maiden Maid of Light thing real quick, but it bears going back to the Maiden Maid of Light is Amaterasu, as we've talked about, a Japanese sun goddess, translated into ice and fire for the Eastern Empire, Great Empire of the Dawn. She turns her back on the world because of all the evil and sin, and this is the Long Night, as very similar to Estrella having to turn her back and leave the world because of all the sin. So, and this is the end of the Dawn Age. So yeah, it's very, very good parallel there.
Amaterasu also turns into a white wolf when she comes to Earth, which I always liked. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's sick. What a badass.
Yeah, she adopts the title Okami. There's actually a whole video game called Okami where you are Amaterasu trapped on Earth as the wolf, killing demons and stuff. Yeah,
that sounds awesome.
Anyway, DK, so like basically the same figure in Greek mythology. She's one of the Ore, which is where we get the word for hour. It was basically a measurement of time that kind of got confused because they represent the seasons, the passing of seasons, the passing of time, and that was associated for the Greeks with law and order. Nothing is as inevitable as the passing of the seasons. Therefore, law and order need to be as rigid and as ingrained as the passing of the seasons, natural law and order.
And then that's contrasted with divine law and order, which is more like morality.
That's my understanding of it, but frankly, I don't think I don't have the philosophical.
They're the laws that govern how people act and what happens when you do things and stuff like that, as opposed to the laws of nature and the universe. So, yeah, okay, so that's cool. And so these are basically the two goddesses associated with Virgo. And they are both heavily associated with justice. So again, the just maid, very clearly Virgo. And the Estrella link could sort of encourage us to think about tying all of this, again, back to the Great Empire of the Dawn, because of the parallel to Amaterasu and the Maiden Maid of Light and the end of the Dawn Age and stuff. So that's pretty cool. So from Dike to Nike. No, it's DK to Nike. This is we double checked this last night, and maybe it's like Nika or some more subtle version of that, but it is not. It is it's close, something close to that. Yeah, Nike or DK. So this is now Metis, Athena, and Nike, and they are grandmother, mother, and daughter, basically, kind of,
sorta, yeah. So Metis and Athena. There is kind of a mother-daughter relationship. They never meet each other. It was prophesied that Zeus's child with Metis, his first wife, would take the kingdom in the same way that Zeus got it from Kronos and Kronos got it from Ornos. So he consumed Metis, kind of a jerk move. But then he got all bloated and Athena popped out of his head as kind of their daughter, maybe. Or maybe a reincarnation of Metis. It's not entirely clear, but she is a similar goddess. She's a goddess of wisdom. She's also a goddess of war. And actually, it's pretty funny. It's a good track to Brienne, because obviously the war goddess falls pretty easily on Brienne, but he's kind of inverted the goddess of wisdom by constantly calling her a dumb wench and thick as a castle wall and all of the stuff that he does with Dunk. It's really just it's interesting because it's the inverse of Athena. So I thought that was funny, but yeah. So Athena is a maiden goddess, just like Brienne is a maid. It's one of her main epithets as well. She has Nike in her, and it matters which one, her right hand. So it's a morning star idea. Anytime you're looking at, this is a fiery winged chariot in her right hand, Nike being, or Nike being the goddess of victory. This is morning star stuff.
I see. Yeah, and Athena obviously associated with victory. So as you're putting out, a lot of times the children of the gods are just permutations of their concepts, refined versions of their concepts. So Athena is just such a very obvious, parallel to Brienne just because of her warrior-like nature, and then the maiden virgin association. But it is also interesting that that Athena is sort of like has this sort of prophesied hero layer as well, because that also complements Brienne's role as one of these Azor Ahai last hero people with a magic sword and all that stuff. So yeah. Some of that is confluence, and some of that is George cooking up the mix. So I'll tell you what, guys, what we're going to do right now is I'm going to hit you with a little music. And when we come back, I'm going to have the new guest. So all kinds of things are happening here. Let's give you the Reading Rhaegar, since we've mentioned Reading Rhaegar. And since Sean wore his Reading Rhaegar t-shirt. Short Rhaegar music. Very short. And welcome to the stream, Nadia the Nerdy. Hello, Nadia.
Hello. Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I am. Although, if you could back away from your camera just a little bit so that you
really
are
much closer than I.
Although maybe you should be twice as big in honor of Brienne the Giant. Maybe that's...
Oh, God, no.
So thank you for coming on. Just real quick, you're Nadia the Nerdy everywhere. Nadia. Yeah. Your main stuff is Twitch and YouTube, right?
Mostly YouTube, no Twitch yet. Yeah.
Okay.
I've considered, but I haven't really taken the leap yet.
As you've been hearing, thanks for joining us late. You were out taking care of the forest, like Artemis.
Yes. Yeah, wandering the world like Brienne in a way, fighting the good fight of keeping the forest pristine.
Awesome. And what part of the country are you from in general, just so people know what forest?
I am in New York in the Catskill Mountains, some of the most beautiful areas in New York, but also I would say the country. If you're in New York, hit up the Catskills.
And of course, my dad's family's from the Poconos, like I was saying, so just not too far away. And then Gray Waste Tim is somewhere in Pennsylvania, in the mountains as well. I think he's in the mountains. I don't know, somewhere. In the case,
He's not from the mountains, but his internet is.
we have established that as well, yes. So as you've been hearing, we've been diving into Brienne using the lens of various Greek goddesses. We just talked about Athena, who is a real ass kicker. And now we're on to Artemis, who is another ass kicker. And Sean, I think Sean is kind of, I turn to him for Greek expertise because I'm only kind of so-so on it. So explain Artemis to us. And I think the Brienne parallels will basically leap off the page as we go here.
Right. So again, she's a maiden goddess, a virgin. She's goddess of wild animals. The hunt, which is, how you should be looking at her trying to find Sansa. She is hunting after Sansa with a guy whose name is Hunt. So Brienne with Hyle Hunt wandering the marshes and wild places of Crackclaw. She's refusing Sir Hyle, which that will actually parallel with somebody else we're going to talk about later.
Because people are always trying to solicit Artemis, and she's like, nah.
Yes, a number of times. Orion is a big one. Orion the Hunter. So in most of the stories, she refuses Orion the Hunter. And so that's like, Brienne refusing Hyle Hunt, who repeatedly asks her to marry him. She protects animals, the young, the innocent, blah, blah, blah. Often, usually, she protects virgins. So, her asking like, hey, are the kids okay? The kids from the inn, and what happened to the dog? And that they thought she was asking about Rorge, who is masquerading as Sandor Clegane with the dog's helmet on.
Oh, when she's like coming in and out of consciousness and saying a bunch of weird stuff. Yeah.
Right. But she is a moon goddess, really associated with the night, the silver blue type stuff. Magic arrows going on. She leads a pack of huntresses who swear themselves to her, and they just roam around the Catskill Mountains trying to protect the forest.
To me,
pretty much, yeah. And specifically like the marshes and wild places, and like that's Crackclaw and the salt pans just to a T. So. Yes, and then she is the twin sister of Apollo, and doesn't Jaime work as a pretty good Apollo?
He does. Apollo, one of his titles is the Golden One. He has a golden bow. So it's like, Jaime, we don't have to push the gold there. Lannister gold, he's very much a Sun King figure, which we've talked about to death. And Daddy's special boy. He's supposed to be the heir, but he's kind of not really. So that it all fits very well for Jaime.
And so obviously, Brienne is not Jaime's twin. She's in a love triangle with Jaime and Jaime's twin, Cersei, kind of. So it's shuffled around a bit, but we can identify the mythical characters. So
you remember I was saying that they keep calling Brienne a cow, and that it was an Io thing. With Cersei playing Hera, the Queen of the Gods and Robert's wife, she calls Brienne a cow. And it works pretty well because, Hera was the one who was trying to discover Zeus's infidelity and found Io in the form of a cow.
Right. Zeus turned Io into a cow to hide her from Hera, right?
Yeah, which I feel like, gun to your head, you got to come up with something better.
She's used to this by now.
Yeah, there's a cow floating in the clouds. This has to be exactly what it looks like.
So Nadia, did you catch the part earlier where we were talking about Wonder Woman?
I did. That's like right around when I was able to start tuning in.
Did that evoke any feelings for you? I mean, that's pretty freaking cool, is it not?
It's really cool, and I appreciated you guys noticing that because I did not pick up on that symbolism the first time I read it. So
I didn't either. Just if I could please, Maynard mentioned it to me, and Sean mentioned it, and I was just like,
yeah, right. Like that makes so much sense. There's like all of the symbolism, like her going and wandering around in the land of men after being sheltered on an island. It's just so perfect. And her being stronger than every man she ever comes across, completely so accurate. And I just love how George always pulls these things, and they're not like so obvious upon first read, but the more you dive into his work, the more you start to see all of this symbolism. And it feels like the world is just always expanding.
That's like the Arya Batman one. Have you heard that before?
I have not, but
So
that I can instantly. I'm like, okay, yeah.
So Arya
Vigilante.
stays at Harrenhal, which has the Batman sigil, essentially the black bat on yellow, and she sees both of her parents killed, like Bruce Wayne does, separately instead of at the same time. Then Arya goes to train with the League of Assassins that she's probably going to
Yeah.
leave, like on
Right.
bad terms. So yeah, it's George loves comics. Is the moral of the story.
Yeah.
But you when we were chatting about Brienne yesterday, Nadia, you mentioned something that relates to this, which is that one of the main Brienne is obviously her own character, but one of the things that she does for the story is that she wanders around and interacts with all these other things and places and people that we might not see otherwise, and so she ties a lot of things together.
Right. She has this perspective that we don't get in most of the POVs, except for I would say Davos, or like the beginning and ending chapters, the prologue and stuff, when you get more of a one-off, but they're usually people who aren't as high up in the totem pole.
Mm-hmm.
And so Brienne is out there talking to people that we don't get their perspectives as much, and I find that really valuable to the story, because yeah, it's like we can have Jaime's perspective, Cersei's perspective, even Arya. They're still coming from the perspective of being a highborn that is respected as highborn. Obviously Brienne is less respected because of her nonconformity to that world.
Yeah, that's a lot of great points there. It's kind of shocking when you look around that like almost all the POV characters are noble and highborn. And so I've had people like bring that up, like, oh, is George really critiquing class? How come all the characters are highborn? It's because in that society, it's the highborn people who have agency and are able to make things happen. But George does do a lot of work to occasionally show this perspective. Like Jon goes to the wall and Donald Noy dresses him down. Sean and I were just talking about that, and exposes Jon's privilege. And this is a major growth moment for Jon. Dany obviously has had her privilege stripped away by growing up as an orphan and then being sold. And that's why she identifies with the slaves and stuff. Davos, obviously, as you mentioned, starts off on the wrong side of the law and an outcast from society, who then gets his fingers cut off as an entrance fee. As we talked about, a little messed up, but he definitely gives us a different perspective. And Brienne, she is, like I was saying, dunk, but highborn. But her highborn doesn't give her the same amount of privilege as other people because of her nonconformity. Exactly right. So she is interacting with people like Septon Maribald. And the broken man speech is one of the highlights of the story, isn't it, Sean?
Oh, I'm going to do that someday. Whether it's on your channel or mine, I'm going to do that someday. But yeah, it's great. In the Dunk comparison is perfect, not just because she's related to Dunk, but she's doing the same thing for the main story that he does in the novellas. And the best I've ever heard it said is that Dunk is Forrest Gump in Westeros. He's just like finding his way through all of the important stuff that happens in a historical time period that's very active. And she's kind of working to do the same. She keeps finding herself probably in different places. She's, at Renly's camp when the Shadow Baby murders. She's part of Jaime's escape from the Northern Army. She's in King's Landing for Joffrey's purple wedding. Like, she keeps showing up at improbably historic moments by total accident.
That is so funny. I never thought of that, but I can totally see the Forrest Gump comparison there.
Like I could see Brienne with the smiley face shirt on too.
Yeah.
But no, I was pondering the nature yesterday too, as well as just now while you were talking, Sean. There's a lot of these characters are kind of naive or simple. Like Forrest Gump obviously is simple. Brienne and Dunk are just a little naive, and there's something about that. I think it's like the authors are kind of like they're saying something here. It's like, we can be too clever sometimes. We can overthink things and over rationalize things. And sometimes it's either maybe children or just somebody with a more simpler perspective, more naive perspective. I may not understand much, but I know right from wrong. And that perspective is really important. And I'm not sure I fully understand what the authors are saying with it, but I'm noticing that common trait with these characters, that simpleness. And there is a purity to it that contrasts with people like Littlefinger who are so clever and so corrupt, right?
Yeah.
I may not
It's
know
almost
much, but I know right from wrong, Jamie.
right. There you go, right there. That's
Is
so
Bram
funny.
Lieutenant Dan. Easy. Let's not go too far.
Start casting all the characters.
The chat will lead us astray, Nadia. Go ahead.
Oh.
Lieutenant
Well, just
Bram.
that so I find that interesting because the purity, the naivety, she has this, she's a less gray character than most of the characters in the story. I feel like most of the characters are there's a gray area there where they're not always doing like great stuff, but you can kind of understand like where they're coming from given their perspective. But Brienne, she is like Ned, how you said before, she's so driven by honor and has this purity that gives her less like her getting a sword called Oathbreaker or Oathkeeper, right?
Mm-hmm.
She keeps her oath to the very end, and she's never strays from her path and never even considers straying. She may not be going about it in the smartest way, but she is pure and not a gray character, which I just find really interesting.
Yeah,
About
Jamie
her.
is struck by that right away, like how determined she is. And he immediately contrasts him with Cleos, like, oh, Cleos is already tired and complaining. And Brienne's just like rowing, just like, nope, not loosing you. We're not stopping, Then I've got it later in the outline, but they're escaping down the river, and they spot a bunch of women actually hung from a tree at an inn. And Brienne is like, we're going to bury these bodies. And Jamie's like, we don't have time for that. And she's like, nope, we're doing it. And so she pulls over and they get ready to do it. And then they spot the sails on the horizon and have to flee again. But it just shows her determination. If she thinks something's right, she's just going to do it. And we'll get it. That's a really important scene, actually. We'll get into that. But let's finish up. We've just got a little more of the mythology here. And Atalanta, this is actually part of the inspiration for Wonder Woman and all this. Now, you went a little deep on this, I noticed, Sean. Can we boil this down a little bit to what you think is the main thing that's relevant is that she's a bit of an Amazon, and then she beats up people who are trying to marry her, right? Something like that?
Sort of. She has the same vibe and aesthetic as an Amazon. She's not actually an Amazon. She's raised by a she-bear who may have had some affiliation with Artemis. So that is also there. Mm-hmm. She models herself as a hunter of Artemis, even though she's not one of Artemis's sacred hunters. I mentioned that thing with the two centaurs because He'll hunt, and it's not the last time.
Right, and we're going to get into the mean prank, but you guys probably vaguely remember several knights they made a bed and pretended to be courting her, and it was very cruel. We're going to tell the whole story. He'll Hunt was one of those people. So here we see with Atalanta, one of her crooked suitors was Hyleos.
Right.
Very cool.
the part about here that you wrote, she killed 2 centaurs who tried to assault her. That also makes me think of the whole storyline where Jaime basically saves her from being assaulted in
Yes.
and that's how he loses his hand, right? So
Well,
it's very
specifically, one of the people trying to assault her was the Dothraki in the Brave Companions. So there are a
interesting.
lot of centaur associations with the Dothraki. So that's definitely something that's going on here, and that's why I
Nice.
mentioned it. The then she her main what she's known for the most is the Caledonian boar hunt, and so boar hunts obviously track really well. Yeah, you're on the boar hunt
My
yourself.
pig. Yeah.
The boar hunt tracks really well in A Song of Ice and Fire. Robert goes after the boar hunt. It's the whole thing. But she was part of it. She drew first blood. Then there was kind of like her trophy was stolen, basically because of sexism. But it was later basically acknowledged, even though unfortunately the guy who did stand up for her got murdered. Just going over broad strokes here. Her
But we'll just
father
pause real
finally.
quick. Brienne wins the tourney at the beginning.
Right.
So that's
Well,
kind
that's
of similar.
actually that's
She's
going to
not
parallel. That's going to parallel even better to something later.
okay.
So the idea is her father finally takes her in, acknowledges her, and he says, first things first, I'm going to arrange a marriage for you. Kind of like Selwyn tried to arrange multiple marriages for Brienne. She said, all right, fine, I'll marry someone. As long as they can beat me in a foot race. And if they can't, I'll kill them. So Brienne, one of her third marriage is to this guy who says, I expect you to act and look like a woman, blah, blah, blah. And otherwise I'll chastise you. She says, you can chastise me if you can beat me in a fight.
Bring it on. Yeah.
3 broken bones, blah, blah, blah. Atalanta kills a lot of suitors. She goes through them. They're not faster than her. She's very fast. And then finally, Hippomenes is in love
Very
with
fast.
her.
Kills a lot of suitors. Carry on.
He appeals to Aphrodite. I'm sorry, I'm doing the speed run here. And she
Doing
gives him
great.
3 golden apples, which are usually, associated with, in various mythologies, golden apples are the apples of immortality. This is not that, but it's a similar theme. He throws the apples during their race to distract her, and she picks them up. Ooh, piece of candy. And kind of maybe lets him win. But he wins, is the point. And they get married. And she actually likes him. Unfortunately, he forgot to thank Aphrodite, and she's awful. So Aphrodite makes them get all horned up. And so they, as I say here, get horizontal in a sanctuary to either Zeus or Rhea. And
That's
that
very
pisses
bad. Like
everybody
Jaime and
off.
Cersei on Joffrey's sepulcher in the chapel.
That's one of the
Yeah.
worst scenes.
Well, and it's for sure referencing this, but either way, this was a big no-no. So Artemis usually, but sometimes Cybele or Zeus turned them into lions as this sacrilege, because Greeks believed that lions couldn't mate with lions, like they had to mate with leopards. So it was basically a way
Hashtag facts.
to keep
Hashtag science.
them right.
That's so
and
interesting.
it tracks pretty well because she kind of has been turned into a lion. She is on the king's business. She's carrying a seal of King Tommen. She has
The
a
lion sword.
lion-hilted sword, Oathkeeper from Jaime. And she's on this quest at the behest of Jaime. So, it all tracks very well to Atalanta. And Atalanta tracks very well to Wonder Woman, the Amazons. It's all very circular. Artemis, Athena.
Nice. So there you go. That's kind of where Brienne is coming from. It's a whole lot of Greek goddesses. You can see why she's very statuesque, and she's a warrior virgin. So it just kind of all tracks. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. I really appreciate your contribution, Sean. You really put a lot of this, what we've gone over so far together. So just a little behind the scenes stuff. Like, Sean is really bringing a lot to these streams that he's on here. And I really appreciate you, because this really gives me a better sort of, hopefully all of us, just a better context for the character. Like, why she's so awesome, where her power comes from, these sort of story traditions that she is keeping up and incarnating, and that's why she rocks so much. So there you go.
Yeah, she's literally all of the most awesome goddesses and Wonder Woman.
Which is crazy. So cool.
There you
This
go.
opened my eyes. I was like narrowed in a little bit, and then I talked to David, and I was like, "Oh wow!"
That's why
I
Jamie's
see.
like squinting
Now.
at her. She's like, "Wait a minute, are you a thief?"
You're making talking to David sound like, oh man, I went on an acid trip with David. Really opened my eyes.
Wow. I mean, that's how I feel sometimes watching his videos and the lives and stuff. I'm always like, wow, that's interesting. And I would have never really, I don't know as much about Greek mythology, so getting it put in this context, it was very, very interesting. So thank you for that.
Grey Waste Tim has appeared for the Forrest Gump talk. Jamie. Yeah.
Well, and definitely, like, I was a fan. Like, I've been, ever since, David, you started, I think episode 2 of the podcast is when I started listening by accident at work. And, so I feel the same way. Like, I was a big fan of his. I didn't really get involved until like about a year ago. So it was nice for me.
Well, a lot of the energy of the podcast is me taking my brain explode moments and just trying to share that feeling with everyone. So George has taught all of us a lot, and I'm very, again, as I was saying at the beginning, just really grateful to play a part in like facilitating us learning stuff from mythology and Marvel comics and DC. Wonder Woman's actually DC, so we got
but he likes his Marvel comics.
Well,
too.
he does, but I'd say finally some equity here.
Yeah, Batman too, DC.
Yeah, that's true. Batman is.
Yeah, Batman never gets enough representation.
Yeah, there's only 47 Batman movies.
Only we need 50
since I was born or whatever. Adam West still the best Batman. Okay, so Brienne, some basic stuff. We talked about some of this, not all of it. Born in 280 means she's 20. She's the only surviving child. She remembers her younger brother Galadon, and she also has 2 sisters born in that died in the cradle, rather. If you would do the Brienne part, Nadia, Sean will do the Thoros part.
Because I don't have my glasses on.
Okay.
I might go get my glasses real quick.
Okay.
I'll be back in 1 second.
House Batman. Oh my god. Yeah, I had not heard the Arya Batman thing. That's great.
Okay, I can see now.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead, Sean.
You have a noble father who must surely love you. Consider his grief if you should never return. Perhaps they will bring your sword and shield to him after you have fallen. Perhaps he will even hang them in his hall and look on them with pride. But if you were to ask him, I know he would tell you that he would sooner have a living daughter than a shattered shield.
A daughter? Brienne's eyes filled with tears. He deserves that. A daughter who could sing to him and grace his hall and bear his grandsons. He deserves a son too, a strong and gallant son to bring honor to his name. Galadon drowned when I was 4, and he was 8, though, and Alysanne and Arianne died still in the cradle. I'm the only child the gods let him keep, a freakish one, not fit to be a son or daughter.
I was muted. Just you can see why I wanted to read this one. I mean, it's really moving. It's heart-wrenching. It's we see this so often with these kids in Ice and Fire that want to make their parents proud. We all do, but it's even more so a thing in this kind of society where so much is placed on the honor of your house and carrying on the name. You literally have a castle, like the visual depiction of your family's like accumulation of status. And she's caught in the middle. Like, she wants to be a good daughter and a good son to her dad, and like can't quite be totally either.
Yeah, and she tries with like she does get prettied up sometimes, or in the past she remembers like the times where she was courted and she just can't like get the words out and she can't speak to people. I know we're going to talk more about that in a bit, but that last line, the freakish one, not fit to be a son or daughter, that like characterizes her whole perception of the world and her experience going through life in general.
Yeah, this is her
Um,
internalizing the stuff that's been thrown at her. That word specifically, freak, and it's. I think everybody that's had that kind of horrible criticism has these moments when you internalize it and you just repeat it. It must be true. I must, be bad at everything. I must be a freak. I must be stupid or whatever. So this is her. This is showing you the trauma, but also like her nobility. Like she wants to make her dad proud. She's trying to carry on the burden of her dead brother and herself as a son and a daughter. So yeah, it really orients us for this. And also, there's interesting contrast here. Notice how gently Thoros speaks to her, saying, "Look, I know your dad would rather have a living daughter than a shattered shield." Randall Tarley is going to give the very harsh version of "Why don't you go home before you die because your dad might want you." We're going to see that in a minute. So it's just very different people, Thoros and Randall. But yeah, so let's see. I talked about her height, 6.5 feet. Like we said, she knows songs. She actually sings well. She rides a black horse. If that's important for symbolism, it might come up later. She's got these 3 failed betrothals that we're about to read, that we've referenced a couple times. She was trained as a knight by the Master at Arms, Goodwin, at House Tarth. So she basically has a full knight's training. And she begins the story having been sent to Storm's End by Selwyn, her dad, to join with Renley. Even though they should be joining up with Stannis. They're like, yeah, they can smell which way the wind is blowing.
And I don't think she was ever going to support Stannis against Renly.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe Renly, having come through Tarth and made such a good impression, probably not only with Brienne, but also her father, maybe played an influence in them aligning with Renly, now that you mention it.
Well, I think one thing we have to keep in mind is that it seems like Selwyn is actually a pretty decent guy. Like, we don't get anything directly, but the fact is he's realized he tried to set up marriages for his daughter, which is what you're supposed to do, but he's done a lot of things that you're not really supposed to do. He has allowed her to train with his master at arms. He sent her in a full suit of armor as the delegation of their island to Renly. So like he's done a lot of things basically to support her in being the person that she knows she is, rather than the person that she's supposed to be.
That's a great point.
That's a level of acceptance that is not normal in Westeros.
Yes, and it makes me think about Sam and his father. You mentioned Randall Tarley and how it's just the complete opposite. Sam is obviously not able to carry forth his family in the way that his father wants him to, and instead of him embracing his son for who he is and the gifts he may have, he sends him to the wall instead. So here we get this moment, right, where he's embracing her for who she is and allowing her to live her life in the best way she can, given who she is inside, and the confines of the society in which they're in.
And I think we can see that reflected in Brienne's confidence, right? Like she has a base of assuredness. She's not like she has a very clear moral compass. She's decisive. She's determined, and like all those things come from having a certain base level of identity and confidence. So yeah, that would have come from her dad supporting her. There's kind of a scale here. I'm glad you mentioned Sam. So Sam is someone who doesn't fit in according to his expectations, and he's treated horribly. His father's very abusive. Brienne gets a lot of support, but she's in the South where lady knights aren't really accepted. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the Mormonts, We see the women of the Mormont clan are warriors, and it's not even a thing because they're in the north and it's bear woman culture and everybody knows it's a thing. And so it's not even questioned. No one looks at Alysanne or Daisy or any of them askance. So it's like if Brienne had been born to House Mormont, she'd be even more secure in her identity and not, questioning. But that's a great insight that you guys pointed out, because I missed that about Selwyn. But you're right. He could have shut down the training. Rickard forbid Lyanna to be trained with a sword, and Selwyn did not. So
it's also not an accident that the Mormonts are associated with bears and they have these female warriors. It's Atalanta stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, Brienne gets thrown into a bear pit.
Right.
And
she
then
fights the bear and wins, kind of, almost. Well, Jaime helps, but
it becomes a Bear and the Maiden Fair play. Like the Bear and the Maiden Fair, the song seems to be mostly about sex, and the man is the hairy bear. But here she's fighting the bear, and then Jaime, the hairy beast, comes and saves her. Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, and it's Beauty and the Beast as well.
Right. Oh, the Bear and the Maiden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bear and the Maiden Fair.
The Beast and the Maiden Fair. Right.
Right. Well, in Atalanta's story, she is her dad leaves her on a mountain because he wanted a son. So he leaves her on a mountain, and she's picked up by this she-bear whose cubs have just been killed by a hunter, and she's nursed by the she-bear. So we see a lot of parallels to that. But then after that, at a certain point, she is rescued by the hunters who killed the bear cubs and raised by them. And so she learns hunting from them, and she models herself as a hunter of Artemis. Usually it's kind of understood that it's because the she-bear was sent by Artemis, just her being, a goddess of the wild things and stuff. So we do see a lot of that. We're going to see the bear in a lot of those situations. And the Bear and the Maiden Fair usually has some connotations with female warriors.
That's cool.
It is. Good.
That makes sense because bears are very fiercely protective of their young. I come from an area with a lot of black bears. Luckily, no brown or grizzly. They're more aggressive. But even still, black bears can be aggressive when you threaten their young. And it's the mothers that care for the young. So,
yeah, I really stumbled across that idea when I was researching Dany, because there used to be this perception of like, oh, Dany the mother, and then Dany the dragon. It's like, no, she's a mother goddess, and mother goddesses have fearsome wrath when they're aroused, and Dany uses her dragons pretty much exclusively to protect the people she thinks of as her children. So yeah, the bear really, the mother bear really makes that clear. Like everyone knows, my friend lives in the woods here in California, up in the hill country a bit, and he told me a story. Like there was a bear cub that was climbed up a tree and didn't know how to get down or something, and it was calling out to its mom. And he was like, yeah, everyone knew to get the hell away and let the mom come. Like, don't get in between those two. Like, if you see the bear cub in distress, mom is nearby, and you don't want to be in between. So yeah. Yeah, the honey in her hair. You guys can put together the symbolism there. But, it is what it is. So these 3 failed betrothals, we already referenced Humphrey Wagstaff, who is the one that said, you're going to have to act like a proper woman once we get married. And she's like, yeah, if you can beat me in the combat, then sure. And then he leaves with 3 broken bones. That's the third and final. The first one, this is almost like a curse. Brian of House Karen. Brienne was 7. He's 10. So they're betrothed as children. But then 2 years later, Brian and his entire nuclear family, mother, father, siblings, all die from a chill. So I don't know what happened there. But Brienne didn't marry him. So that was the first failed proposal. And then there's Red Ronnet Connington, who's we're going to talk about. And so he's 6 years older. He's 18. Brienne is 12. We're going to read this quote in a second. And he gave her a rose upon meeting and said, that's all you shall ever have from me, freak. And Jaime, of course, punched him in the mouth, taught him some respect. So did Brienne, as it turns out, on the battlefield. So this is Brienne recalling Sir Ronnet. Is it easy for you to read, or with the glasses, or should I have Sean do it?
Me? Oh, I'm just not as used to reading out loud, to be honest, but I am happy to read if you want me.
You did a
can
fine
see
job,
now.
and it is an acquired skill. But yeah, I just want to make sure you can. It's large
I
enough
can
on your
see
screen.
now.
If it is, go
Yeah,
ahead
yeah.
and read this passage here.
Okay. She remembered a day at evenfall, and a young night. I cursed myself. Okay, I'm gonna start over. She remembered a day at evenfall, and a young knight with a rose in his hand. He brought the rose to give to me, or so her septa had told her. All she had to do was welcome him to her father's castle. He was 18, with long red hair that tumbled to his shoulders. She was 12, tightly laced into a stiff new gown, its bodice bright with garnets. The two of them were of a height, but she could not look him in the eye, nor say the simple words her septa had taught her. Sir Ronnet, I welcome you to my lord father's hall. It is good to look upon your face at last.
So this is the scene you were referring to earlier, actually, where she's tongue-tied and can't get the words out.
So it's the silencing of Nissa that we talk about all the time. But it's also, it's a reverse Beauty and the Beast. It's her castle instead of the Beast's castle, and the Beast gives her a rose instead of the Beast having a rose where the petals fall off. And yeah.
And then she's perceived as the Beast, even though she's
Right.
not. And it's clear based on that passage we read earlier how much this interaction influenced how she thinks of herself. While she may have this confidence that her father has helped lay the groundwork, she also is insecure because she knows that people perceive her as ugly. So, yeah, her referring to herself as a freak probably stemmed from this interaction.
And so there's a great follow-up here. This is the Jaime and Ronnet scene. So why don't you do Jaime, Sean, and I'll do Red Ronnet. And go ahead and start off.
Sir Ronnet was a landed knight, no more. For any such, the Maid of Tarth would have been a sweet plum indeed. How is it that you did not wed?
Well, I went to Tarth and saw her. I had 6 years on her. Yet the wench could look me in the eye. She was a sow in silk, though most sows have bigger teats. When she tried to talk, she almost choked on her own tongue. I gave her a rose and told her it was all she would ever have from me. The bear was less hairy than that freak.
Jaime's golden hand cracked him across the mouth so hard the other knight went stumbling down the steps. His lantern fell and smashed, and the oil spread out, burning. You are speaking of a highborn lady, sir. Call her by her name. Call her Brienne.
Connington edged away from the spreading flames on his hands and knees. Brienne, if it please my lord. Brienne the beauty. So, Jaime's learned her name, and now he's teaching it to other people. It's very nice of him.
Red Ronnet Connington descends the steps with a torch. It's some Azor Ahai stuff.
Griffins in the underworld.
Yeah.
But it's a good. I mean, that's a solid gold hand. That hurt, and you can see like he went flying. The lantern goes flying, and Jaime's just like Brienne. Like, damn, dude. Okay.
I love how he stands up for her in that moment, and she's not even like right there. It's like he's clearly influenced. She's clearly influenced him quite a bit at that point.
Yeah, Jaime's arrogance, when it realigns towards doing the right thing, spins around and becomes sort of noble, because it's like, I'm going to do the right thing for the sake of it. I'm defending her reputation just because I feel like it. You know, like it's not even political or calculated. It's just like, it's pure emotion. So yeah, pretty interesting. Pretty interesting
Yeah.
moment, and just one of the many ways in which George spells out these two the affection that Brienne and Jaime have for each other without having them actually say it.
Yeah, because he couldn't admit it, but also, it's just this is going to inspire a lot of I can fix him.
A little bit. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see where Jaime ends up. So Renly, in contrast to those three suitors, we have Renly coming through Tarth on his progress when Brienne was a teenager. No, it's hard to say when exactly, but at some point when she was a teenager. And he was just the soul of courtesy to her. And as Courtney Penrose says, and this is in book 2, when somebody says in Courtney Penrose's presence, "Oh, Brienne, she's the one who killed Renly," and he says BS. I knew her. She loved Renly Baratheon from the first moment she laid eyes on him. A blind man could see it. So that first moment actually was when he came to court, and Courtney Penrose is a Stormlands lord. So he may have been in Tarth when Renly's on his progress to actually see this. That's what I think is being implied. So now this next quote, this is another one about reputation. This is Brienne when she has met Sir Illifer the Penniless and what's the other one? Oh, Creighton Longbow. And so she's bearing the Loston shield from Harrenhal. And so Illifer is saying, "You bear a liar's shield to which you have no right. My grandfather's grandfather helped kill the last of Loston. None since has dared show that bat. Black is the deeds of them that bore it." And Brienne's like, "Oh yeah, I lost my own shield." And Creighton's like, "Yeah, the other one," Creighton says, "a true knight is the only shield a maiden needs." So they're trying to do like some soft patriarchy here. But Illifer keeps going. He's like, "Yeah, who would cloak themselves in shame? Lord Lucas bore that bat," and names all these other people. "Why wear such arms, I ask myself, unless your own sin is fouler still and fresher?" He unsheathed his dagger, an ugly piece of cheap iron. "A woman, freakish big and freakish strong, who hides her own true colors. Cray, behold the maid of Tarth, who opened Renly's throat for him." And do you want to read this, Nadia?
Yeah. That is a lie. Renly Baratheon had been more than a king to her. She had loved him since first he came to Tarth on his leisurely lord's progress. To mark his coming of age, her father welcomed him with a feast and commanded her to attend. Elsewise, she would have hidden in her room like some wounded beast. She had been no older than Sansa, more afraid of sniggers than of swords. "They will know about the rose," she told Lord Selwyn. "They will laugh at me." But the Evenstar would not relent. And Renly Baratheon had shown her every courtesy as if she were a proper maid and pretty. He even danced with her, and in his arms she had felt graceful, and her feet had floated across the floor. Later, others begged to dance with her because of his example. From that day forth, she wanted only to be close to Lord Renly, to serve him and protect him. But in the end, she failed him. "Renly died in my arms, but I did not kill him," she thought. But these hedge knights would never understand. "I would have given my life for King Renly and died happy," she said. "I did no harm to him. I swear it by my sword."
And then she swears by the seven, essentially. She says, "May I never know her mercy if I lie. I swear it by the Father and ask that he might judge me justly. I swear it by the maiden and the crone, the smith and the warrior, and I swear it by the stranger." So, as you guys, I'm sure, noticed, she feels like a beast. She would have hidden in her room like a beast, but Renly treated her like a beauty. So it's right there again. And I just want to point out where she says, "Oh, she'd even felt graceful and her feet had floated across the floor." She probably is a good dancer. She's very graceful and coordinated. That's why she's such a good fighter. So it's probably just that she feels awkward in her shape. but she's probably a fine dancer, just as she's a good singer. And then so finally, it's easy to see why she's got this attachment to Renly, is because Renly gives her normalcy. She wears a dress. Renly treats her like a lady. That's how it's supposed to freaking work. And so, like, part of it is like the kindness, but part of it is just the normalcy that is so refreshing from the constant like persecution. So
Yeah, he was probably the first like attractive man who was actually kind to her without ulterior motives.
and then even more touching, other people then dance with her after his example. So she had probably had a good time the whole night and actually felt like a princess for once. Like, yeah.
Well, in a way, it's kind of sad because we do get from Loras what Renly really thought of Brienne. He kind of thought that she was absurd. He treated her well because she was a vassal and he's supposed to, and he can be charming when he wants to be. When really they should have kind of just been allies as outsiders because Renly's gay. That much is very obvious. They way overdid it in the show. They made him kind of a stereotype, but he is gay. He has, Loras is basically his husband. He marries Loras's wife or Loras's sister in order to basically keep up.
Yes, Beard Marjorie and Maid Loras. We know. Yes, the story.
Right. So he is also very much bucking traditions in Westeros. He's very much, things that people are treated mercilessly for. But he's important enough to where they will let him pretend it's not happening. And that should have made him empathize with Brienne. But it's kind of clear that he never really did.
Yeah. I never thought of him not really empathizing with her, but that's an interesting point. Maybe he did on some level, but it wasn't talked about with Loras potentially. But I
think it sort of reflects just like the bar that we're talking about to clear here. Like, literally someone who just treats her courteously and professionally is like a life-changing event for her because people treat her so poorly. I think maybe that's the idea of showing us that for Renly it wasn't like a meaningful thing.
Yeah, he was just doing his duty as a courteous lord. But clearly that's not common for these people. They're not always courteous just because they're a lord. Whereas he was charming, so he was able to be nice to her without it meaning a lot. But it just goes to show how deep-seated her insecurity about her body and her looks is, that would make such a huge difference.
And the other thing about Renly is like he does recognize her skill. She wins the tourney, and he's very quick to grant her request. And like, yeah, well, she's kind of weird, but she is 6'6", and she just beat everybody up. So sure, you can be on my Kingsguard. So that's a certain amount of recognition, and you can see that like in Renly's camp, she's given an honorable place and treated with respect. And that's not necessarily something that she's always found. So let's get into this story here. This is going to be Brienne about to meet Randyll Tarly. And this is going to lead us backwards into the story of when she showed up at Renly's camp and the cruel knights played this game on her. So this is kind of the way we have to explain it because she recalls it in this chapter. So we're going to start with just a little bit of Randyll Tarly's harsh justice, just to give you a taste of the scene here. So a sailor off the galleass came next, and Mrs. Brienne in the audience chamber waiting for her turn. His accuser was an archer of Lord Mooton's garrison with a bandaged hand and a salmon on his breast. "If it please my lord, this bastard put a dagger through my hand. He said it was cheating him at dice." Lord Tarly took his gaze away from Brienne to consider the men before him. Sean.
Were you?
"No, my lord, I never."
For theft, I will take a finger. Lie to me and I will hang you. Shall I ask to see these dice?
The dice? Well, might be them dice. They're lucky for me. It's true, but
Tarly had had enough.
Take his little finger. He can choose which hand. A nail through the palm for the other. We're done. March the rest of them back to the dungeon. I'll deal with them on the morrow.
He turned to beckon Sir Hyle forward. Brienne followed.
My lord.
Brienne said.
Sorry. There's either a mailman or nothing at my door, Rick.
Oh, the pups.
We've always got time for hounds. Go ahead, Nadia.
My lord, she said when she stood before him. She felt 8 years old again.
That's you, Sean.
Did I say this? Oh.
Sorry, it was the dog's ear.
How will you find him if you do not know his name?
No, my lady.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
My lady, to what do we owe this honor?
I have been sent to look for...
How will you find him if you do not know his name? Did you slay Lord Renley?
No.
Tarly weighed the word. He is judging me, as he judged those others.
No. You only let him die.
It was sorcery. I never...
You never?
His voice became a whip.
Aye. You never should have donned mail, nor buckled on a sword. You never should have left your father's hall. This is a war, not a harvest ball. By all the gods, I ought to ship you back to Tarth.
Is that me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Do that and answer to the throne? Her voice sounded high and girlish when she wanted to sound fearless. Podrick, in my bag you'll find a parchment. Bring it to his lordship.
Tarly took the letter and unrolled it, scowling. His lips moved as he read.
The king's business. What sort of business?
Sorry.
This is just basically she's repeating Randall's words in her head. Lie to me and I'll hang you.
Sansa Stark.
If the Stark girl were here, I'd know it. She's run back north, I'll wager, hoping to find refuge with one of her father's bannermen. She had best hope she chooses the right one.
She might have gone to the Vale instead. Brienne heard herself blurt out. To her mother's sister.
Lord Randall gave her a contemptuous look.
Lady Lysa is dead. Some singer pushed her off a mountain. Littlefinger holds the Eyrie now, though not for long. The lords of the Vale are not the sort to bend their knees to some up-jump jackanapes whose only skill is counting coppers. Go where you want, and do as you will, but when you're raped, don't look for justice. You will have earned it with your folly. And you, sir, should be at your gate. I gave you the command there, did I not?
And then we're going to sort of skim through some of this to get to the next part. But basically, he dismisses them. Brienne is reflecting on these new... Lysa's dead, so that's a major piece off the board there, because she was thinking maybe Sansa would go to the Vale. And then, let's see... Hyle offers to help, essentially. He's like, oh, he picks up the threads. Like, you were talking about the stinking goose, and Brienne's like, go back to your gate. And then he starts to apologize. And this is before we even know what he's apologizing for. Okay, so this is how Martin unreels his story in a backwards fashion. And he says, it was only a game to pass the time. We meant no harm. Ben died, you know, cut down on the Blackwater, and Pharaoh too, and Will the Stork. And Mark Mullendore took a wound that cost him half his arm. Good, Brienne wanted to say. Good. He deserved it. But she remembered Mullendore sitting outside his pavilion with his monkey on his shoulder in a little suit of chainmail, the two of them making faces at each other. What was it Catelyn Stark had called them that night at Bitterbridge? The Nights of Summer. And now it was autumn, and they were falling like leaves. So they leave, but then later she starts reflecting on this story. Okay. And let's see here. They meet Nimble Dick. And it's right here, when Renly donned his crown. Sean, will you pick up reading? We may take turns, because I think this is all inner monologue.
Okay. When Renly donned his crown, the Maid of Tarth had ridden all the way across the realm to join him. The king himself had greeted her courteously and welcomed her to his service. Not so his lords and knights. Brienne had not expected a warm welcome. She was prepared for coldness, for mockery, for hostility. She had supped upon such meat before. It was not the scorn of the many that left her confused and vulnerable, but the kindness of the few. The Maid of Tarth had been betrothed 3 times, but she had never been courted until she came to Highgarden. Big Ben Bushy was the first, one of the few men in Renly's camp who overtopped her. He sent his squire to her to clean her mail, and made her a gift of a silver drinking horn. Sir Edmund Ambrose went him one better, bringing flowers and asking her to ride with him.
So, real quick, Sean, the silver drinking horn, that's like something you'd give Artemis for sure, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the drinking horn it's always going to be a staple of horned gods. And she is very much associated with horned animals constantly, all the time. In the quote we just read with Randall, he used jackanape as like a pejorative. But Artemis is famous for turning people into jackalopes.
Interesting. So yeah, we see that sort of continued here in the gifts that they are giving her. They're giving her these gifts of the hunt. Yeah. And then, of course, here comes along Hyle Hunt. But go ahead.
Sir Hyle Hunt outdid them both. He gave her a book, beautifully illuminated and filled with 100 tales of knightly valor. He brought apples and carrots for her horses, and a blue silk plume for her helm. He told her the gossip of the camp and said clever, cutting things that made her smile. He even trained with her one day, which meant more than all the rest.
She thought it was because of him that the others started being courteous. More than courteous. So she thinks it's Renly happening again, essentially. At table, men fought for the place beside her, offering to fill her wine cup or fetch her sweetbreads. This is just so cruel, man. Like, she just wants to be treated normally. And so instead we've gone from like this horrible treatment to this over-the-top treatment. She can't trust it. There's no way she could trust it. Like, you can feel it as the story is unfolding. Sir Richard Farrell played love songs on his lute outside her pavilion. Hugh Beesbury brought her a pot of honey as sweet as the maids of Tarth, quote unquote. Sir Mark Mullendore made her laugh with the antics of his monkey, a curious little black and white creature from the Summer Islands. A hedge knight called Will the Stork offered to rub the knots from her shoulders. Brienne refused him. She refused them all. In true Artemis or Atalanta fashion, I guess. When Sir Owen Inchfield seized her one night and pressed a kiss upon her, she knocked him arse backwards into a cook fire. That's not how you win the bet. That's against the rules. Afterwards, she looked at herself in a glass. Her face was as broad and buck-toothed and freckled as ever, big-lipped, thick of jaw, so ugly. All she wanted was to be a knight and serve King Renly. Yet now, were you going to say something, Sean?
Yeah, I was going to say we should recognize real quick, for parallels and symbolic connection, that's Inchfield from, it's the same house as
Lucas Longinch.
Right.
And
From
Dunk, the
story.
second story. Yeah. It's one sword. Oh. And that's the one she punched.
Right. And he's trying to kind of force himself on her here. Sir Lucas Longinch was kind of trying to forcibly marry, what's her face? So, yeah.
Yeah, Rohan Weber, totally.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Go ahead and pick it up, Nadia, with "It Was Not."
It was not as if she were the only woman there. Even the camp followers were prettier than she was. And up in the castle, Lord Tyrell feasted King Renly every night, whilst high-born maids and lovely ladies danced to the music of pipe and horn and harp. Why are you being kind to me? She wanted to scream. She wanted to scream. Sorry. What do you want? Rendell Tarley solved the mystery that the day he sent 2 of his men-at-arms to summon her at his pavilion. His young son Dickon had overheard 4 knights laughing as they saddled up their horse, and had told his lord father what they said. They had a wager. 3 of the younger knights had started it, he told her, Ambrose Bushy and Hyle Hunt, of his own household. As word spread through the camp, however, others had joined the game. Each man was required to buy into the contest with a golden dragon, the whole sum to go to whoever claimed her maidenhead.
Yeah,
It's heartbreaking.
it's really messed up, man. It really is. Go ahead, Sean, with the Tarley here.
I have put an end to their sport. Some of these challengers are less honorable than others, and the stakes were growing larger every day. It was only a matter of time before one of them decided to claim the prize by force.
Which implies that Tarley knew about it for a while before he actually blew the whistle on it.
Which is so Tarley of
Nice.
him.
Very nice. Yeah, it's very Randall Tarley, isn't it?
Not caring until, he felt like it became a distraction.
Right.
True
They were
scumbag.
knights.
Sam's dad.
Okay. True, the worst. They were knights, she said, stunned. Anointed knights. And honorable men.
No, that's Randall there.
Oh, sorry. Gotcha.
And honorable men. The blame is yours.
The accusation made her flinch. I would never, my lord. I did not encourage them.
Your being here encouraged them. If a woman will behave like a camp follower, she cannot object to being treated like one. A war host is no place for a maiden.
Okay, I have to stop it because that's an Aphrodite reference.
The war host directly, yeah, isn't it?
So, yeah, Aphrodite was an import. She was not originally a Greek god. She's based on Ishtar, which we've talked about a lot. And in the Iliad, they make a huge point of Zeus telling Aphrodite, the battlefield is no place for you, maiden, or something like that. Like, basically, because there was kind of a cultural clash with the Greeks who already had a war goddess in Athena, and they did not want Aphrodite to carry war connotations like she did when she was Ishtar and Astarta and all of that. So it was a very important line in the Iliad to basically highlight her new role as strictly just a love goddess, love and beauty. So saying you have no place in a war, maiden, and specifically calling her maiden, it's a reference to both the Odyssey or to the Iliad and Aphrodite.
And of course, Randall Tarley here, again, Sam's dad, very abusive, embodying all the worst aspects of patriarchal society, blaming the victim, just enforcing the gender role, just absolutely heaping scorn on anyone who doesn't go along with the gender conformity stuff. Like, pretty awesome. Obviously, probably what's happening here is some of his anger at Sam is even coming through here. Like, you damn, non-binary kids with your non-binariness and stuff. So
are all just disappointments in the end. But yeah, he's like Zeus in that situation, telling her she doesn't belong. And just like Zeus, if you look at the spelling of his name, he's Randy.
Oh, Yeah, symbolism of Randall Tarley stream coming never. But yeah, maybe we'll have 5 minutes for him in a Sam Tarley cold hands video or something. But then he goes on, if you have any regard for your virtue or the honor of your house, you'll take off that mail, return home, and beg your father to find a husband for you. So like I said, it's the messed up version of what Thoros was like saying, you know, hey, maybe this, you know, try not to die and stuff. And then she says, I came to fight, to be a knight. And he says, the gods made men to fight and women to bear children. A woman's war is in the birthing bed. And we've seen Catelyn say this to her. And so this is that's not an accident either. Catelyn is reflecting, I guess you could call it internalized misogyny or just like acceptance of the patriarchal system and reflecting its values. And so you see, even though they're very different people, Randall and Catelyn, they both are subscribing to the same worldview, kind of. So, don't say that to Lady Mormont, is all I'm saying. Don't tell her where her place is. Okay, so then I think that's the end of this scene. That's the part where I wanted to read. So then there's a bit more. Yeah, that's where they meet Nimble Dick. This is her memory from, this is like Feast maybe. Oh yeah, this is after Nimble Dick dies. No, I'm sorry. It is when they're staying at an inn and she won't let Nimble Dick stay in the room with her and Pod or something like that. Or they're in the loft and he's on the floor. There's a few different versions of the same idea. And so she's saying, I was not always wary. She said, oh, sorry. Did you want to go ahead?
No. Definitely go ahead. I just was like, oh, I'm like
I would like to be a princess too sometimes.
You be a princess.
I was not
I have a lot
always
of wine
wary.
and energy drink. I'm getting a drink while you guys
Go
talk
ahead.
about
Take care of the hounds. Do what you need to do. I was not always so wary. When I was a little girl, I believed that all men were as noble as my father. Even the men who told her what a pretty girl she was, how tall and bright and clever, how graceful when she danced. And again, she probably, is a good dancer. That's probably true. It was Septa Roel who had lifted the scales from her eyes. They only say those things to win your lord father's favor, the woman had said. You'll find truth in your looking glass, not on the tongues of men. It was a harsh lesson, one that left her weeping. But it had stood her in good stead at Harrenhal when Sir Hyle and his friends had played their game. A maid has to be mistrustful in this world, or she will not be a maid for long, she was thinking as the rain began to fall. In the melee at Bitterbridge, she had sought out her suitors and battered them one by one. Pharaoh and Ambrose and Bushy, Mark Mullendore and Raymond Nayland and Will the Stork. She had ridden over Harry Sawyer and broken Robin Potter's helm, giving him a nasty scar. And when the last of them had fallen, the mother had delivered Connington to her. This time, Sir Ronnet held a sword and not a rose. Every blow she dealt him was sweeter than a kiss. So that's pretty sweet comeuppance there, just beating the crap out of him in public, in front of the entire army. Loras Tyrell had been the last to face her wrath that day. He'd never courted her, had hardly looked at her at all. But he bore 3 golden roses on his shield that day. And think of the golden apples used to distract, Atalanta. That's what it was. Atalanta. 3 roses on his shield, and Brienne hated roses. The sight of them had given her a furious strength. She went to sleep dreaming of the fight they'd had, and of Sir Jaime fastening a rainbow cloak about her shoulders as her crushes sort of bleed together. So, that's that story. So this is Brienne's trauma, basically. This, it's all of her fears and insecurity played out in a big public way. Everybody knowing she's the butt of this joke. Everybody treating her like a fair maiden. This is how they would treat her if she was hot. So it's literally her just not being conventionally attractive that makes it all a joke. And it's just incredibly cruel. It really just crystallizes all the things she's ever been insecure about. And she takes this revenge and she beats the crap out of all of them, and that's cool. but she's still left with this sort of fractured identity, isn't she?
Absolutely traumatized.
Yeah.
Which I would be. I think anybody would be, to be treated so cruelly over and over and over again for something that you can't control. Especially like back then, I mean now, and or back then, as if this was reality. But in this world, it's not like you have plastic surgery or the ability to change your looks unless you're like, Melisandre maybe, but or that's another one Roy Dotrice pronounces weird. Side note.
I
but-
heard it as you said it. I was like, oh yeah, Melisandre.
Oh,
Yeah, he
it's
kind
coming
of.
out. I've been keeping my Brienne under control, but
Oh, Pattaya. It's the best in the scene where Lysa and Peter are making love, and she's calling out his name, and Roy Dotrice is like, "Oh, Pattaya." Like that's you can't you can't keep a straight face there, man. Like,
Oh man, there's so
I could have
many
stayed
moments
off
like
stream
that.
longer.
oh, Pattaya. So, just to emphasize how much this is the center of her trauma, we see these series of nightmares that she has when she's imprisoned by the Brotherhood on the way to Lady Stoneheart. She's been biter bitten, and she's having fevered nightmares and stuff. Sean, go ahead and read this first one.
When she finally drifted back to sleep, she dreamed about the men she'd killed. They danced around her, mocking her, pinching at her as she slashed at them with her sword. She cut them all to bloody ribbons, yet still they swarmed around her. Shagwell, Timian, and Pig, aye, and Randall Tarley, too, and Vargo Hote, and Red Ronnet Connington. Ronnet had a rose between his fingers. When he held it out to her, she cut his hand off.
So you can see in the way of dreams, things are merging. Jaime's hand cutting. And so it's like, just vaguely, she's sort of feeling guilty, but persecuted. And it's all just kind of a mess here. There's not one particular meaning yet, but we can see that like Jaime is being put in this romantic position of like, he's the one that she wishes was courting her. But she still feels like she can't get anything right. And so she cuts his hand off.
There's also some more Greek stuff going on. Pig and Timian together are kind of doing a parallel to Pygmalion. There's a myth, Pygmalion and Galatea, where Pygmalion he hates women because they talk and stuff, super annoying things, right? And so he makes his own out of marble, and he falls in love with the marble statue he made.
Oh, it's like the guy who's ready to leave his family for the AI chatbot girlfriend.
Yeah. He was doing homage, but yeah. So
you knew that was coming, Nadia. Come on.
I don't know about
Don't
that.
be surprised. We all knew it was coming. It's a real story.
Begs
I believe
Aphrodite
that.
to bring his marble girl to life, and she does, and they live happily ever after, Pygmalion and Galatea.
Interesting. Little myth references everywhere. So, Nadia, will you read this dream, and then I will do the third one? I think, yes. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. She dreamt she was at Harrenhal, down in the bear pit once again. This time it was Biter facing her, huge and bald and maggot white, with weeping sores upon his cheeks. Naked he came, fondling his member, gnashing his teeth together. Brienne fled from him. "My sword," she called. "Oathkeeper, please." The watchers did not answer. Renley was there, with Nimble Dick and Catelyn Stark. Shagwell, is it Pig or Pig? Pig, and Timian had come. And the corpses from the trees, with their sunken cheeks, swollen tongues, and empty eye sockets. Brienne wailed in horror at the sight of them, and Biter grabbed her arm and yanked her close and tore a chunk from her face. Jaime, she heard herself scream, Jaime.
And then it says, even in the depths of her dream, the pain was there. Her face throbbed, her shoulder bled, breathing hurt, etc. I was muted, but I was trying to interrupt and saying, if we're going by the Patire rules, then pig would be pig.
Like, yeah, that's what I was
But I didn't
thinking.
get it. I was muted, so you finished the quote, so that's fine. Better that way. But yeah, pig.
Mary mentioned in the chat something I was going to bring up, but yeah, we should mention it. So Pygmalion and Galatea is the basis for the classic musical My Fair Lady. I've talked to you about this before. He's a huge fan of the classic musicals. He does a lot of them in this. But yeah, he does the My Fair Lady thing. I know the story I just told didn't seem like it really paralleled Brienne a lot because she's more closely following the My Fair Lady plot.
There you go. So there's a tangled web that George is weaving of stuff I haven't seen and don't know about, but I appreciate y'all putting that together, so that's cool. And we forgot to mention Hermaphrodite, Sean.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, if we were going to talk about Baphomet.
Right. We walked right by this like at least 3 times. So just real quickly, Hermes and Aphrodite have a child, and it is Hermaphrodite, and it has both male and female parts, obviously, and this is the root of the word hermaphrodism. But that's interesting because obviously Brienne is gender bending or blurring or whatever you want to say, and she is got all this Aphrodite Venus symbolism. And Hermes is, where would Hermes be in her story?
So we talk about this before. There is Hermes stuff just because she's doing a lot of psychopomp duties, and Hermes is a big psychopomp, bringing people to the River Styx for Charon to bring to the underworld. But largely, it's not Hermes directly. Hermes originally was Pan. Pan had a title called Pan of the Herms, and it was about stone busts that they would put on roads as markers in the likeness of Pan. And eventually, traveling and seeing these Herms, they kind of created an independent god of traveling and messengers and roads and all that called Hermes based on that title. So Hermes was originally Pan, and Pan is like the ultimate nature god, the ultimate god of the wild. And so that kind of fits in with George's whole aesthetic here. And in merging that with Aphrodite to make Brienne makes a lot of sense just from a symbolic perspective.
There you go. Well, like I said, she is statuesque. So somebody make a statue of Gwendolyn Christie.
Bring it to life.
Bring it to life. Come on. We got the vision. So last dream here. This is where all this has kind of been leading up to, is this one. So let me hang on a second. This time she dreamed that she was home again at evenfall. Through the tall arched windows of her Lord Father's hall, she could see the sun was just going down. I was safe here. I was safe. She was dressed in silk brocade, a quartered gown of blue and red, decorated with golden suns and silver crescent moons. On another girl it might have been a pretty gown, but not on her. She was 12, ungainly and uncomfortable. So that sucks. You're 12, and you're already having this body image stuff going on. That sucks. Let's see. Waiting to meet the young knight her father had arranged for her to marry. A boy 6 years her senior, sure to be a famous champion one day. She dreaded his arrival. Her bosom was too small, her hands and feet too big. Her hair kept sticking up, and there was a pimple nestled in the fold beside her nose. He will bring a rose for you, her father promised her. But a rose was no good. A rose could not keep her safe. It was a sword she wanted. Oathkeeper. I have to find the girl. I have to find his honor. And this is, remember I said earlier, like Jaime is having his better instincts like called to life by Brienne. So that's kind of what she's referring to here. Finally, the doors opened and her betrothed strode into her father's hall. One more time. She tried to greet him as she had been instructed. There we go. Only to have blood come pouring from her mouth. She had bitten her tongue off as she waited. She spat it at the young knight's feet and saw the disgust on his face. Brienne the beauty, he said in a mocking tone. I've seen sows more beautiful than you. He tossed the rose in her face. As he walked away, the griffins on his cloak rippled and blurred and changed to lions. Jaime, she wanted to cry. Jaime, come back for me. But her tongue lay on the floor by the rose, drowned in blood. Brienne woke suddenly, gasping. So this is kind of the ultimate nightmare here. Her fear of rejection is being applied to Jaime, who's the person that she actually loves here. Is that not what's going on? That's how I psychoanalyze this.
100%.
Okay.
Track it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we can see like the brokenheartedness here, her desire for acceptance, essentially, and the fear of rejection. I have ADHD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria definitely can be a weird thing sometimes. It is a dysphoria where you can't tell if you're in your own head or if everyone is laughing at you. And so here she really is just like terrified of being rejected. And her brain is creating the scenario even before it's like Jaime hasn't rejected her. He came back to save her and then gave her a Valyrian sword that he didn't know what to do with, you know. But her brain is creating that scenario anyway, where she's being rejected and she can't talk. Even though she's actually had a lot of good dialogue with Jaime, like we said, it's like pretty much awesome dialogue. So
yeah, like she's bringing out his humanity. One of the things when it says I have to find his honor, and you just think of all the interactions from the first one she's had with him, and you think about the first time we meet Jaime, and like one of his first actions is, you know, pushing Bran out the tower. So there's so much growth there that happens in so many ways because he meets Brienne, not Brian.
Brian, yeah. Well, and just to boil it down real simply, like she is like Dunk, embodying what knights are supposed to be. And Jaime's had a hard time figuring out what the F he's supposed to do with being knighted and being a member of the Kingsguard. And Brienne is kind of showing him, like, this is what it's about. This is that life. And I think there is an appeal to Jaime of being idealistic because, like I said, it has something in common. There's something arrogant and bold about being so idealistic and not bowing to the consensus wisdom. Like, it is a bold life to lead. And that is kind of what Jaime wants. And remember, he wanted to be Arthur Dayne, but became the Smiling Knight. Well, Brienne has come along and showing the path to true knighthood, if you will. Your thoughts, Sean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing that I wanted to draw attention to is that she goes up into the White Sword Tower with Jaime, which he is now the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. So that is his castle. That is Beast's castle. And then what does Beast do with Belle after, you know, a certain amount of Stockholm syndrome? He sends her back out into the world to save her father. In this case, she's saving Sansa, but there's still kind of a call out to familial relation because she pretends that Sansa is her sister. Like, my sister, a maid of 10 and 3, you know, blah, blah, blah. So keep saying it over and over again, even though nobody believes her. But yeah, it's, and she will come back to King's Landing for Jaime at some point in the same way that Belle came back to Beast's castle and made him objectively less hot as a human being.
Cool. Nice. Well, that's yet another one. More Beauty and the Beast stuff. So I had pulled this is a Kindle jump off to her beating up everyone at the tourney. I thought it would be fun to read because she's beating everyone up pretty effectively. But we are 3 hours into the stream. NBA Finals are coming up in 45 minutes, and I want to stick with the character stuff. So if you want to further enhance your enjoyment of the stream, you can go and read some of Brienne's battle scenes, or some of the best battle scenes. Of course, she is finishing with Red Ronnet as Catelyn walks up, and then her fight with Loras is mostly what we see, and then her being honored. There is a little bit about the Knights of Summer that comes on at the end of this that I did want to read, and I'll just do it from memory because I remember it. And basically, it's that bit about, Catelyn observes all the revelry that night, and she's like, "Oh, there are the Knights of Summer, and winter's coming." And Brienne says, "No, it's always summer in the songs, and we're all heroes, and we'll live forever in the stories, and this and that." And Catelyn doesn't have the heart to naysay it. So she bites her tongue, and someone comes along and interrupts it. But it just shows you Brienne's idealism. Even though she's just been picked on by all of these knights, she can still feel the vibe of it all, and sort of speak to the idea of being immortalized in song and being a hero. It's kind of like Sansa. And Nadia, you mentioned this. The Sansa-Brienne parallels as far as believing in true knights and princesses and stuff. This is kind of an example of that. It's just like, well, if we're a hero, we'll live forever in the songs. And that is kind of true in the honor sense. Like I was saying, Ned's honor lives forever. But really what Brienne is saying is more like the Sansa thing here, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find it really interesting, the parallel between how Sansa just believes, she's so enchanted by the true knight, that idea, only to obviously become quickly disenchanted, and as she experiences the cruelty of the world. But Brienne is the true knight in a sense, just not the true knight that Sansa is expecting, and she obviously doesn't know that this true knight is searching for her.
And so let's jump ahead to that. Actually, I've got a little bit of notes on that. Oathkeeper here. Yeah. So when Jaime gives her this charge, he's sort of seeing something about Brienne, which is that she, as a hero, needs a quest and a cause. And she's just looking for that cause. She shows up to Highgarden, and Renly dies. Then she lies to Lady Catelyn, and Lady Catelyn gives her a mission. And that's something she can wrap her brain around. And Jaime sort of sees that too. She's like, oh, she needs a quest. Or she's going to get in trouble. Like, she needs a job. And also, he had to get her out of King's Landing because some people thought she killed Renly and stuff. He smoothed it out with Loras, kind of, sort of. But he gives her Oathkeeper. And it's interesting, Oathkeeper, because Jaime is essentially, he doesn't know what to do with the sword. It's an ill-gotten gain, and he can't even use it without his right hand. So he doesn't know what to do with it. He's got a messed up relationship with his dad, and he doesn't want this gaudy Lannister sword. And so he decides to give it to Brienne as a way of trying to restore his own honor, essentially. And unfortunately, this ends up with Brienne being caught in between him and Lady Stoneheart, as we talked about. But this is the scene where he's giving her the sword. Go ahead and read it, the two of you. And this is starting with Jaime.
I have made kings and unmade them. Sansa Stark is my last chance for honor. Besides, Kingslayers should band together. Are you ever going to go?
Her big hand wrapped tight around Oathkeeper. I will, and I will find the girl and keep her safe, for her lady mother's sake, and for yours.
And then she bowed stiffly, whirled, and went. And are you ever going to go? That's like straight rom-com. Are you ever going to go? Or am I going to have to start crying? Like, this is so rom-com here. It's hilarious.
No, you hang up.
Exactly.
Let's make a trailer.
And so it says, Jaime sat alone as the shadows crept across the room. Okay, we can skip that. All right. So, yeah, and then a maid of 13, as we were saying, her and Sansa's stories kind of match. She's looking for Sansa. They haven't met yet. But Sansa, of course, her story has this gap in it for a hero. She's holding out for a hero.
Yeah.
And it's maybe Jon Snow, and he's got to be fast. And okay, this is terrible. Okay, it's terrible. Absolutely the wrong song to uncork. Okay, so she's holding out for the hero, and it's not Dantos, and it's not Peter. It's not Florian the Fool. She's looking for him though, and Brienne is kind of Florian the Fool, isn't she, Nadia?
Yes, she is. That was one of the first things I said to you yesterday when you asked me what I thought about Brienne. She is so naive in the way she starts her mission, and like she thinks she's being very covert, and like no one knows I'm looking for Sansa, but like really everybody knows you're looking for Sansa. And also to me, the thought process of, oh, she must be in Bitterbridge, I have to go to Bitterbridge, it's like, one, that's too close to King's Landing. Two, if someone's really trying to hide, they're not going to go to their hometown first.
Dude, her and Barristan should start a private investigation firm, B&B Private Investigators. They just put on the nose and the mustache and the glasses and go around and be like, have you seen a maid for 13 years with red hair who, not Sansa. No, definitely not.
No.
Let me just go get my egg. I call mine Pod, and then we'll Forrest Gump around until I accidentally find Sansa.
The dunk parallels are great. They really are. Oh, funny stuff. So the point is, they're part of the same story, even though they haven't met, as Nadia said to me yesterday, essentially. So it's funny that this hero that Brienne is hoping for is out there, but she's a woman who's a knight and just isn't quite sure about whether she should be called lady or sir. But she's heroic. We know that. So yeah, we'll have to see if those plot lines ever do intersect. You know, when Sansa comes out of the Vale, where's Brienne and Jaime and what's going on? Maybe they will come back around, maybe not. But just the fact that she's looking for Sansa puts them in the same framework of this sort of knightly Arthurian thing with the princess and the hero and all that.
Well, and downtown Clanny Brown points out in the chat, there's some Don Quixote vibes as well, and it's true.
Don Quixote, I don't know that story.
Oh, basically, it is very easy to put in very broad strokes, but it's also a great story you should all read, because it's mainly satire. This idiotic Spanish kind of upper class guy wants to be a knight, even though it's, several hundred years after knights are a thing. And so he decides to just put on a suit of armor, get on a horse, and start going around the countryside pretending to be a knight. And he ends up looking like a dumbass most of the time. He convinces his very dumb neighbor to be his squire, Sancho Panza. But yeah, anyway, he goes around like fighting wizards.
What was that?
Rick, I fed Rick, but he doesn't like Summer being anywhere near him when he eats, because he's protective of his food and because he hates her. She
That
came
was a
to the
back
door
off.
because I'm in here and she wants to hang out, but he's not okay with it because his food bowl's right there. Anyway, yeah, the misadventures
Drama.
of Don Quixote are hilarious, and he looks like an idiot the entire time, and it ends up getting very much like a telenovela for a big part of it, which is weird, but yeah,
I'll have to read that. Obviously, I know that it's one of those classics. I somehow didn't read it in school and never went back for it, but that sounds delightful. I'm sure that's making people chuckle for me to hear about that, like it's a new thing that just got written. But in any case, this is the aftermath of Renly's death. We don't need to read Renly's death itself. That's more about Renly, but this is just Brienne. Since we didn't read the one battle, this is a demonstration of Brienne's power. Only a few instants passed before Robar Royce and Emmen Kai came bursting in, though it felt like half the night. A pair of men-at-arms crowded in behind with torches when they saw Renly in Brienne's arms. and her drenched with the king's blood, Sir Robar gave a cry of horror. "Wicked woman!" screamed Sir Aemon, he of the sunflowered steel. "Away from him, you vile creature!" "Gods be good, Brienne, why?" asked Sir Robar. Brienne looked up from her king's body. The rainbow cloak that hung from her shoulders had turned red, where the king's blood had soaked into the cloth. "You'll die for this!" Sir Aemon snatched up the long-handled battle axe from the weapons piled near the door. "You'll pay for the king's life with your own." "No," Catelyn Stark screamed, finding her voice at last, but it was too late. The blood madness was on them, and they rushed forward with shouts that drowned her softer words. Real quick, do you guys think that, like, I know it just looks bad that she's holding the king and he's bleeding out, but also everyone knows that she's besotted over him and was thrilled to join the king. Like, do you think her gender nonconformity and the sort of hatred or discomfort that some of these men have with it might be playing into the fact that they're so quick to convict her here?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if she were to have really killed Renly, why would she still be on the ground holding him in her arms, like standing there shocked? It would. I mean,
If
you
it were
don't normally
Loras,
kill
if it
people
were
and like
Loras,
hold them in their death. Like, you would probably leave because you don't want to be caught killing the king.
yeah. And sorry to interrupt. I was just saying, if it was Loras there in her position holding Renly with blood, would they assume that Loras had just killed Renly, or would they be like, where'd the killer go?
Absolutely
No.
not.
Although the defense of, it was a magic shadow. That's not great.
Oh, it's a hard sell for sure, but just
Yeah.
she didn't even get there. Like, as soon as they came
Right.
in, they were like,
Yeah.
"Wicked woman," you know.
You killed him. It's like, obviously she didn't if she's still there.
Because those bias, like, snap judgments are where biases show up the most. So yeah, I have to think it's a factor. Just wanted to point that out. In any case, Brienne moved faster than Catelyn would have believed. Her own sword was not to hand, so she snatched Renly's from its scabbard and raised it to catch Aemon's axe on the downswing. A spark flashed blue-white as steel met steel with a rending crash, and Brienne sprang to her feet, the body of the dead king thrust rudely aside. Sir Aemon stumbled over it as he tried to close, and Brienne's blade sheared through the wooden haft to send his axe head spinning. Another man thrust a flaming torch at her back, but the rainbow cloak was too sodden with blood to burn. Sean, will you pick it up here?
Sure. Brienne spun and cut, and torch in hand went flying. Flames crept across the carpet. The maimed man began to scream. Sir Aemon dropped the axe and fumbled for his sword. The second man-at-arms lunged. Brienne parried, and their swords danced and clanged against each other. When Aemon Kai came wading back in, Brienne was forced to retreat. Yet somehow she held them both at bay. On the ground, Renly's head rolled sickeningly to one side, and a second mouth yawned wide, the blood coming from him now in slow pulses. Sir Robar had hung back uncertain, but now he was reaching for his hilt.
And then we can stop right there. Catelyn basically says, no, it wasn't her. It was some shadow. And Robar Royce probably didn't laugh at that because he's from House Runestone. They have this magic belief in their runes, their First Men house. He has a lot of rapport with Catelyn. Maybe that's the most important thing. And so she's able to talk him into forestalling. And I just wanted to highlight this because Brienne, she's thinking quick here. She doesn't have a weapon. She draws Renly's weapon from his corpse and catches the axe on the downswing and then defeats 4 people, essentially. Kind of crazy.
Well, and something we should highlight is that there's going to be a lot of respect for the Starks among the Royces. For one, they've married into House Stark or vice versa.
Yeah.
Several times recently. That's one thing. Another thing is, they are outside of the North. There's not a whole lot of worship of the old gods. You have House Blackwood, you have House Royce, House Redfort, and really just a couple other very minor houses. So, like when Waymar came north to join the Night's Watch with his father and some other people, they stopped in Winterfell for a long time.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's not a coincidence that Waymar would be joining the Night's Watch like of his own choice. Like that's something a northern house would do, not a southern house. So they are like a northern house in the Vale, totally. Nate Davis pointing out Brienne really embodying both the maiden and the warrior here, crying out for Renly, her love, innocently, and then immediately pivoting to this warrior. And yeah, it's 3 men, I guess. The 4th is Robar, who doesn't fight. So,
well, and fun stuff here. You'll notice she grabbed a torch, so she was holding a sword and a torch while she was in this Emerald Pavilion here, and that's fun because obviously we've talked a lot about, you know, that's kind of one of the origins for your channel is the whole Mithras with the sword and the torch going through the underworld, and this underworld is an Emerald Pavilion, so it's kind of directly relating the Green Sea that the Green Seers navigate as an underworld, as an afterlife type thing.
Oh, I love the second mouth opening from the green man's neck. It's like the red smile of the weirwood carving. Yeah, it's beautiful. So the boulder pushing is another one where I wanted to read some of this because it was very exciting when I was reading it last night. But I will just highlight some of the points here. This is the first Jaime chapter of Storm of Swords. It's the first Jaime POV we ever get. And he starts off with this interplay with Brienne. And he's poking fun at her awkwardness. We already read a couple of those quotes, actually. But he's also admiring her strength and determination right off the get-go. So it's a mixed bag right from the beginning where his inner monologue does not match his outer monologue. Okay, he's treating her very poorly with his mouth, but inside his brain, cognitive dissonance is happening. So I mentioned the thing about stopping to bury the women hanged from a tree by the inn. The crux of that story is that there's a sign posted that says they lay with lions, which means they were hanged because, in fact, Cleos Frey remembers. He's like, oh, yeah, me and our Lannister party stopped at this inn and slept with the sex workers there. So some Northmen, potentially Roos's Northmen, came through here and burned the inn down and killed all these sex workers, hung them.
Well, and remember the theme of lion sex from Atalanta.
Oh, right. Oh, right. Forbidden lion sex. Yes.
Yeah.
And so essentially what this is important because Nadia's laughing because
I'm sorry, just like the things you don't really expect to hear in life. It's like forbidden lion sex is one of them.
Yeah,
probably.
Context is important. If you clip out things we say on the streams with no context. So, the thing that Brienne is having to face here is that nobody is like, oh, Jaime puts it in her face like, oh, it was your side that did this. And so it's kind of like, and we see that in the Riverlands especially. The broken men are from all the armies, and they all commit atrocities. And so it just highlights Brienne's fruitless quest to find a noble cause or master to serve. There isn't really one in a feudal society very often. You have to serve your ideals at the end of the day. So it shows Brienne's naivete, but also her honor in pulling over to bury the dead when she doesn't really have time to. And then they have to flee because they see the sails on the horizon. So then they're being chased by a boat with like 20 people on it, and it's obvious that they can't outrun them. And Jaime's basically ready to go down fighting. He's like, give me a sword, we'll kill a few of them first before we die. Brienne's not about that. She's got a plan. And the key line is that Jaime's looking at her eyes and says, pretty eyes and calm. He knew how to read a man's eyes. He knew what fear looked like. She's determined, not desperate. So this is what I meant by Brienne being confident. She's not shaky. She's, oh, what do I do? She's got a plan. She spots the river fork and the cliff face and quickly formulates a plan. She dives into the water. She climbs up the cliff face. She pushes the boulder on the other ship. And then the best part, she gracefully throws herself off the rock and folds into a dive. It would have been ungracious to hope she would smash her head on a stone. Sir Cleos turned the skiff toward her. Thankfully, Jaime still had his oar. One good swing when she comes up paddling up, and I'll be free of her. Instead, he found himself stretching the oar out over the water. Brienne grabbed hold, and Jaime pulled her in. And then when she's coming in, she's like, she's even uglier wet. Who would have thought it possible? You're a bloody stupid wench, he told her. We could have sailed on without you. I suppose you expect me to thank you. I want none of your thanks, Kingslayer. I swore an oath to bring you safe to King's Landing. And you actually mean to keep it, Jaime said, with his brightest smile. Now there's a wonder. And that's kind of, again, in a nutshell, isn't it, Sean? Like, Brienne is a wonder because of her determination to keep her oath.
Yes. She is a Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
There we go. Full circle.
Right there.
Yeah. And there was also another. So we talked about like the futility of serving a feudal lord with grace and kind of the futility of her trying to play the perfect knight. And what we got there was a scene of Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill fruitlessly, and then he succeeded in pushing it off as Brienne.
Brienne does sort of eternally struggle like Sisyphus. That sort of fits. Yeah. That sort of fits. So it's a touching scene. Again, just Jaime and Brienne chemistry, electric. But it's like I'm going to smack her in the head with this. Oh, well, I guess I'll help her up. She did save me. So
classic rom-com vibes.
Yeah, Crypt Girl's on it. It's literally a rom-com.
Enemies to lovers, classic. Potential lovers.
I think I read about this in Court of Rose and Thorns.
Oh God. Probably.
And gosh, we're running close on time. I wanted to read the scene where Jaime and Brienne are fighting in the river, but we should really do that whole chapter. To be honest, we're running short on time. We can't read the whole scene. It's just. It doesn't even have a lot of character analysis. It's just really hot. So we'll have to put that aside. But then, of course, what's interesting about it is like Jaime just gets tired of all the accusations and he finally has it out, has this duel with Brienne. And it's just unclear to everyone involved what the objectives are. It's a great scene. And then, of course, to make it even funnier, the Bloody Mummers come up and start laughing at them and talking about, I was chastising my wife or whatever he says. And then someone's like, it looks like she was doing the chastising.
Yeah, you got to win the fight to chastise her. We've seen that movie before. It wasn't a rom-com.
And it alludes back to Brienne's challenge for her suitors. You have to beat me in a fight in order to win my hand. So we could see them. This is just foreplay.
Well, and there are so many scenes that are loaded with that kind of stuff. So like he gets in the baths at Harrenhal with her and he has that whole kind of confession. And it's actually, a very humanizing scene for him. And it humanizes him for her. And it's very good. But like he starts to get a little bit of a boner looking at her. He gets a little bit ashamed, tucks himself deeper under the water. And then when he tries to get up, he hits his arm and he almost passes out. He falls down and he describes himself as blah, 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 like floppier than a limp cock. So it's like there's all this sexual symbolism, whether he's directly thinking about it and stiffy or whether he's, like it's completely past that. They're still talking about sexual anatomy. They're making comparisons. The fighting is always like sex.
It's interesting. That makes me. Oh, sorry.
No,
it just
ahead.
made me think of Cersei and like his relationship with Cersei is like she's not a good person. She's not beautiful on the inside, but he's attracted to her because they're just twins and they have that thing going on, and she's beautiful. And she mirrors him in beauty, but he's starting to maybe in that moment realize, oh, maybe like attraction is deeper than a physical thing. It's about what is inside sometimes. Not just, oh, she looks just like me, like she is basically me, but crazy.
Which is a major breakthrough for him because everything in Jaime's life has been such a heavy emphasis on the outward appearance of honor or beauty or this or that. And now he's finally probing deeper into what is actually meaningful in life.
And he built his whole life around Cersei up until that point. I mean, all of the decision making he's done up until that point was, is this gonna keep me at Cersei's side, basically?
Yeah, it's very in the forbidden love nature of it, with her being Robert's wife. It's all very Lancelot, and his growth moment is realizing that Lancelot is not a good character and that he has to stop that. Which I think, all this growth, I think it makes Brienne his therapist, which is also an inappropriate relationship.
Well, I will say that every good relationship, both people are teaching things to each other. So I don't know if Jaime's teaching anything to Brienne. I think he is, not intentionally, but here's where it is. Okay, so Brienne has an overly simplistic view of the world. It's part of naivety is putting things in black and white terms, and she thinks that the perfect knight exists, which is black and white thinking. It doesn't really exist. It's not. If you pick up a sword, it means you're going to do violence, and that is going to be not a clean thing. Okay, so basically Brienne has to face here that this person that she's been trying to see as a monster, Kingslayer, push Bran out the window, is in fact more complex than she thought. And his great dishonorable deed of murdering the king was actually a heroic deed that saved 10,000 people from being burned alive with wildfire. So that's an incredible complexity. It's one of the biggest complexities of the story for us to wrestle with. And so George is basically serving it up on a platter in dramatic fashion to Brienne in this very memorable scene, which the TV show absolutely nailed. Absolutely nailed. Both actors, everybody just nailed it. And so that's when it felt like Game of Thrones, back then. So, or it felt like a Song of Ice and Fire, I guess I would say. But yeah. The big question becomes, why is it that Jaime picks this moment to finally tell the truth of what happened?
Because of his audience. I think it's really as simple as that. One, he doesn't like I think despite himself, he respects her in the same way that he wanted to be Arthur Dayne. Whether he's acknowledging this or not, he's acknowledging, or I think he's feeling that she has a lot in common with how he viewed Arthur Dayne. She's overly simplistic and it gets her into trouble in terms of her worldview. But despite that getting her into trouble, she never abandons any of that. She still works for that ideal, and he chooses to open up to her when he doesn't open up to anyone about that. And I think it's one of the few scenes that it was actually better in the show than in the books. As in the books, she calls out to try to get him help. She's like, Kingslayer, she yells it to the next room. And he thinks, Jaime, my name is Jaime. In the show, he told her that out loud. And I think that's really important, because after that, she did start calling him Jaime. And he started calling her Brienne instead of wench and all that.
Yeah, and I feel like the trauma of losing his hand is also starting to hit him, and he's grappling with like, I sacrificed my sword hand in a way, like I didn't know that was going to happen, but that's what ended up happening because I defended this person. And why did I defend her? Like, why did I put myself in that position? Like he's like possibly grappling with that trauma and realizing that this is someone I can be vulnerable with. Like he's now has this handicap and she has been perceived as like ugly. So like he's now like kind of relating to her in a way as well.
Yeah, I think I love both those points. Like what Sean is saying, it basically is that Jaime is recognizing Brienne as the archetype of a true knight, and so it's almost like he wants to prove himself to this person who is an echo of Arthur Dane, even in the virtue and in the exemplifying, what it takes to be a true knight. And so this is someone that like actually upholds that standard. Like he's so cynical about it. He's like, it doesn't even exist. And then he finally has found it. Somebody doing it, really doing it. And so he's like, actually, I was trying to do the right thing. Like he's going back to that moment because Jaime was only like 17 when he killed Ares. He was very young. And he was put in a pretty lose-lose situation. He was told to obey the king by Gerald Hightower himself. And then the king is burning and torturing people. So obviously it was the right thing to do to kill Ares to stop King's Landing from being burned down. But then he didn't feel like society was going to give him a fair audience about it. And so he just became the monster that everyone thought he was, kind of like Tyrion did. But now he's going back to that moment and he's kind of like, actually, I was trying to do the right thing. And he wants to be redeemed. He wants somebody to see what he really did. It's a kind of, he just has never had that moment of somebody really understanding what it was about.
Yeah, a certain level of validation there in a way.
Yeah, and then there's also the vulnerability of like, he feels comfortable with her probably because he understands her, and they share a same sense of world view, or like to the extent that Jaime can connect with being a true knight, he understands Brienne, and so he feels comfortable with her. But yeah.
Well, it's kind of interesting because a lot of Arthur Dane's notoriety comes from his sword, but a lot of it comes from the fact his record of service as a Kingsguard. And she is a Kingsguard. She was in Renly's Rainbow Guard. It's just called a Rainbow Guard. It was a Kingsguard.
Yeah.
And so is he. Whereas he feels like the cloak soiled him and everybody thinks he soiled the cloak. Whereas he feels like she's doing it honor. And it's kind of like, well, maybe I could do that. Maybe I could, golden hand the just. Like that's where that dream comes from. It comes from Brienne.
Totally. She embodies justice. Yeah.
Right. Well, and it's a good parallel because he's obviously, his whole family, there are a bunch of people with the Tyr prefix. He's showing a lot of Tyr symbolism. He fought with wolves and lost his hand. Tyr shoved his hand in a wolf's mouth and lost it. And Tyr is the god of justice. And Jaime is trying to be justice, this one-handed justice avatar of the god of justice, Tyr, basically. And it's because of Brienne. So looking for that kind of inspiration, Jaime is more Greek than anything else, but there's definitely some Tyr in him.
And so, interesting question from Nate Davis in the chat. Do you think Cersei would have been receptive to Jaime's story? Do you think Jaime ever told Cersei? We don't really know.
I'm sure she would believe him if that's what you mean by receptive. Do you think she would care?
She wouldn't care. That's just it. Be like, yeah.
She wouldn't offer that type of second chance in a way that Brienne can offer him by, like
she
you're
doesn't
saying, she's the true knight. He's like, please validate me. Like I was trying, I was young. And Cersei wouldn't give that sort of.
She doesn't understand the dishonor.
She's a narcissist. She's a classic narcissist.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So she's a classic narcissist. She lacks empathy. We're seeing that Jaime, as messed up as he is able to form empathy. He's forming empathy for Brienne to the point where he's defending her in situations where she's not present and it's not going to get back to her. Smacking Red Ronnet Connington because he was disrespectful towards her. So, like, Cersei does not have that gear. Jaime Jaime was never going to get empathy from her. He was never going to gain acceptance from her. Or, well, he is getting acceptance from her, but only because she basically sees him as a narcissistic reflection of herself. So she's okay with everything he is because she never looked past skin deep. She doesn't care. She doesn't care that this has damaged him, that he did this, this act. This is, a terrible act.
There's a lot of abuse from Cersei to Jaime, actually, once you look at it. Yeah. There's a lot.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Super toxic.
So him getting something more meaningful from Brienne, he flips on a dime. He really does. And when he gets that note from Cersei to go defend her in the trial, he goes with Brienne.
He burns it. Yeah, he does. Yeah. It's just so, we talked about it right at the beginning, but just, what's going to happen in Stoneheart's Cave with Jaime and Brienne is one of the hardest things to predict and one of the most interesting things that we're going to be looking for on the first pages of Winds of Winter whenever it does come out. Like,
absolutely.
The very first Jaime or Brienne POV is going to give us something crazy.
Fire white sex.
Oh,
God.
Who knows where it could go? It could go anywhere, Sean.
Anywhere.
Scott,
so
the rom-com ends one way.
We already talked about the bear pit some. It's obviously the Beauty and the Beast thing happening. Then there's this romantic line, why did you come back? I dreamed of you. Of course, he did have the Weirwood Stump dream of her. So it's like a knight in shining armor, jumping down into the bear pit. And Jaime, all he had was the wooden sword to defend her, too. So he didn't have, right? Wasn't that the case?
Yeah. Did he even bring one? She had a wooden sword.
Right.
She had a wooden sword. He didn't have anything. He just jumped down there knowing that they wouldn't let him be endangered.
Oh, that's right. And then they shot the bear.
Yeah, filled him full of quarrels.
That's what they did. Which, poor bear.
Yeah.
Obviously. Bear didn't do nothing wrong. Just being a bear. But, Jaime essentially being clever. Oh, the jawbone. The Samson jawbone. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Nadia?
No.
Samson used the jawbone of an ox to whoop a bunch of Philistine ass one time in the Bible. Because Samson's very strong. And
he had long hair, so he was strong.
Of course.
Right.
The
so Jaime cut his hair at the beginning of the Storm of Swords when he was in the boat there, which is a whole thing with Jaime. But sticking with Brienne, I guess that's a cool Samson reference in there, in that bear pit there, jawbone of the ass.
Atlanta as well, just because the hunters that eventually raised Atalanta, they rescued her back from the she-bear, right? And killed the she-bear. So we have a bunch of people who, they're not necessarily hunters, but they're using crossbows, which is something hunters would do, killing a bear and then bringing Brienne with them. So.
Very cool. That Atalanta one is giving and giving. So then we talked about Oathkeeper. We did that whole section. We talked about Detective Brienne. B&B Detective Agency, Barristan and Brienne, they're on the case.
Haven't learned a thing.
Keeping people guessing, but not very much. And there's there's a little touching moment when she meets Pod Payne. And Pod is basically talking about how Tyrion disappeared and he didn't know what to do. And he's looking for Sansa just to try to figure out what happened, I guess. And so he runs into Brienne and they look for Sansa together.
Well, Mommy and Daddy were fighting and Mommy left the city and Daddy went to prison. So he's going to fix everything and bring his family back together.
And then we talked about Dick Crab. It's mostly just highlighting her trust issues. Not that she should have trusted Nimble Dick, but she's just not sure how to deal with it. And then once she, after he's dead, she realizes, oh, he was honorable. And then she sort of honors him by tossing the 2 golden dragons in after burying him, which is just shows that honor means more than money, right?
Mm.
And then we have the showdown at the crossroads. Like I said, we're not going to read the biter scene, but essentially it's the no chance, no choice. She steps out into the rain, leave her be. If you want to rape someone, try me. And she's 7 against 1. And, it's, I don't want to belabor the point, but this is just the point of the heroism. It's the heroic ideal. It's not that you're going to win or that you're promised anything or recognized or thanked. It's doing the right thing because it's the right thing at the end of the day. And that's what she's doing here. And that just shows that she really is, as heroic as they come. And I also want to point out that she kills Rorge in the Hound Helm one-on-one before Biter jumps in. So it really was unfair.
And this was exactly an echo of the Sir Waymar duel. So there are the same number of people sitting around watching. Mm-hmm. She has a duel with Rorge, just like Waymar is having a duel with the other. The difference is Waymar lost. Brienne wins the duel. What happens if Waymar wins the duel against that one other? The next one's going to jump in, right? He doesn't win no matter what. She didn't win no matter what. The only reason she survived is because Gendry, from the top rope with the spear in the throat, But it's a symbolic death for her as well, because she's, in a coma for days. She's crossing a river. She's blindfolded.
Yeah. I was pointing out that Gendry killing Biter, since Biter's a Merling and Gendry is a Horned Lord, I'd have to ask Tim, but it's some sort of Lovecraft, Deep One, Cthulhu, Horned God struggle here. I'm not sure, but yeah. The wounds are nasty. Yeah, man. He bit her face, dude. It's when you're reading it the first time, you can't even process what's happening. You're just like, oh my God, this is not
chaos.
Ugh. Ugh. And then so even though she saved the orphans at the end, she's put on trial. And this is the last thing we want to talk about. Basically, this a total inversion of all the justice archetypes. We've got the hangwoman, Mother Merciless, embodiment of the stranger, and this is a very unfair trial. This is an inversion of all the justice themes of Brienne's story. Brienne is put on justice. The lasso is put around her throat to make her not tell the truth, but rather compromise her truth. And serve Lady Catelyn with her sword. So it's really messed up, and it just shows you how hard it is to do the right thing when you've got these crooked, powerful people around you. And Stoneheart has become crooked. She's really just an embodiment of revenge here. And everything is used against her. The letter, the sword, everything that she's been saying, misinterpreted. So it just feels so cruel, really, for Brienne to fall into this trial, if you'll call it that.
Absolutely.
It's her Jaime moment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right. Right. She's being judged very unfairly for having tried to do the right thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's more for them to relate to. They're both Kingslayers, quote unquote. And she's also, that's also similar. She's judged for killing Renly when she didn't.
The king she served. Yeah, it's all. I mean, we used this word yesterday, and I totally forgot. Symbiotic, the two of them. They're not only symbiotic, but they're also yin and yang. But that means that they have a certain amount in common. So they really have very similar arcs in a lot of ways.
The stories are definitely tied together, and like we said earlier, they're both doing Beauty and the Beast stuff. And we've talked about Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa doing the flip-flop. Dany and Jon both do both. He's murdered like Nissa Nissa, wielding a flaming sword like Azor Ahai. Dany is Nissa at the dragon hatching scene, but also Azor High Reborn coming out of the pyre with the dragons. So it's definitely something we've talked about. It's Baphomet. It's the harmony of ice and fire and of opposites, and the hero always has to harmonize those opposites. So we see Brienne trying to integrate these different sides of her personality, if you will, to use psychological speak. But we'll all just have to wait and see what comes out of the cave, what's going to happen there. So, Nadia, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. This is super fun.
Yeah, we'll have you back on again sometime, talk about somebody different. And yeah, thanks for helping all of us do Brienne together. We've been waiting to do it with Brienne for a long time, and now we've done it. So time to smoke.
Phrasing
And
here is suspect.
time to smoke. There's been a lot of unfortunate phrasing here on the stream today, or was it? So yes, thank you for joining us. And you are Nadia the Nerdy on YouTube. Sean, you are here with 1,000 Voices. Thank you all for joining us. We are rooting for the Pacers. I'm not predicting Game 7. I'm just rooting. I'm just rooting for this one, baby. So
Yeah, we're very passive. We're just enjoying it.
just enjoying it. We'll see.
I just hope they all have fun.
Yeah. It's just a game. Why do you
Just
want
a
to be
game.
so mad?
So yeah, Mary says you're invited back. Yeah, we'll definitely have you back on. And thank you very much, both you guys. And yeah, if everyone could help me out by hitting refresh on the stream and leaving a comment as soon as I end the stream here, I would very much appreciate that. And with that said, I'll see you with a new video about Bran the Builder this week. And thank you for watching the Night Fort. So, cheers.
Bye.